Did you know that only 1% of people consistently invest in their daily education after leaving formal school? This is your opportunity to be part of this minority that builds the future, while others merely survive the present. Educate yourself every day. You will discover that true power lies not in what you already know, but in what you choose to learn each day that passes. This audiobook is a silent revolution that begins inside your mind and manifests in every area of your life. Through the combination of neuroscience and ancient wisdom, you will understand that your mind is not a fixed container, but rather a garden in constant expansion. Each new piece of knowledge doesn't simply add to what you already possess. It completely transforms your energetic vibration, elevating you to frequencies where magnetic opportunities manifest naturally. This is not just another book about study techniques. It is a map for the complete transformation of your reality through the power of conscious and intentional education. You will discover how science proves that the simple act of learning daily literally reshapes the structure of your brain, creating new neural connections that attract abundance, success, and extraordinary achievements. Prepare yourself to break the pattern of mediocrity that keeps 99% of people trapped in limited lives. Your journey toward excellence begins now, one day at a time, one learning at a time. Chapter 1. The Great Separation. Why 99% stop learning. The moment you stop growing is the moment you begin dying, even though you're still breathing. Sarah graduated with honors from one of the most prestigious universities in the country. She had everything mapped out: the perfect job, the ideal career trajectory, and a clear vision of her future success. 5 years later, she found herself sitting in the same cubicle, doing the same tasks, earning barely enough to cover her student loans, watching younger colleagues get promoted around her. What happened to the brilliant, ambitious woman who once believed she could conquer the world? The answer lies in what I call the Great Separation, that invisible moment when most people unconsciously decide that their learning journey is complete. Sarah, like 99% of the population, had been programmed to believe that education was something you finished, not something you lived. But here's what the science tells us. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the day you graduated and today. It's still the same magnificent organ capable of infinite expansion, still hungry for growth, still ready to create new neural pathways that could transform your entire existence. The only difference is the story you've been telling yourself about your capacity to learn and grow. The invisible prison of educational completion. When you walked across that graduation stage, something profound happened in your subconscious mind. The traditional education system, designed in the industrial age to create compliant workers, whispered its final programming into your neural networks. Congratulations, you're done learning. Now go apply what you know for the rest of your life. This programming runs deeper than you might imagine. From kindergarten through college, you are conditioned to see learning as a series of finite achievements. Pass the test, get the grade, move to the next level, and eventually reach the finish line. This linear model created what neuroscientists call fixed mindset patterns, neural pathways that interpret challenges as threats rather than opportunities for growth. The devastating truth is that this mindset doesn't just stop your intellectual growth. It actually begins to shrink your brain. Recent studies using neuroimaging technology show that adults who stop actively learning experience measurable decreases in gray matter density, reduced neural connectivity, and diminished cognitive flexibility. In essence, the use it or lose it principle applies not just to muscles, but to the very organ that creates your reality. Dr. Michael Merzenich, a leading neuroscientist and pioneer in brain plasticity research, discovered something revolutionary. The adult brain remains plastic throughout life, continuously reorganizing itself based on experience and learning. But here's the critical insight. This plasticity works in both directions. Just as learning creates new neural pathways, the absence of learning allows existing pathways to weaken and disappear. Think about this. Every day you're not actively learning something new. You're not maintaining the status quo. You're actually moving backward. Your brain is literally becoming smaller. Your neural networks are weakening, and your capacity for creative problem-solving is diminishing. This is why so many people feel stuck, frustrated, and unable to create the changes they desperately want in their lives. The neuroscience of mental stagnation. When you stop learning, your brain enters what researchers call default mode network dominance. This is the same neural state associated with depression, anxiety, and rumination. Your mind begins to operate primarily from existing patterns, recycling the same thoughts, creating the same emotions, and generating the same behaviors that have defined your past. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Your brain doesn't distinguish between physical and mental challenges. When you engage in new learning, you activate the same reward centers that fire during physical exercise, romantic attraction, and spiritual experiences. Your brain releases dopamine, norepinephrine, and endorphins, the same chemical cocktail that creates feelings of excitement, motivation, and euphoria. This means that people who commit to daily learning aren't just becoming smarter. They're literally living in elevated emotional states. They wake up with anticipation instead of dread. They approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear. They radiate an energy that naturally attracts opportunities, relationships, and experiences that align with their expanding consciousness. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's research on positive emotions reveals that learning-induced positive states create what she calls upward spirals of well-being. Each new piece of knowledge doesn't just add to your intellectual arsenal. It transforms your entire energetic signature, making you a magnet for experiences that match your elevated frequency. The comfort zone conspiracy. The reason 99% of people unconsciously choose stagnation over growth isn't laziness or lack of intelligence. It's biology. Your nervous system is designed to prioritize survival over growth, familiarity over possibility, and the known over the unknown. This ancient programming served our ancestors well when physical threats were constant. But in today's world, it's the very mechanism that keeps you trapped in mediocrity. Every time you consider learning something new, your primitive brain sounds an alarm. This is dangerous. This requires energy we might need for survival. Stay with what you know. This is why browsing social media feels effortless, while reading a challenging book feels like work. This is why watching Netflix feels natural, while taking an online course feels overwhelming. But here's the transformational insight. The discomfort you feel when engaging in new learning isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something's right. That slight tension, that mental stretch, that feeling of being slightly overwhelmed, these are the sensations of your brain, literally rewiring itself for a more powerful version of reality. The 1% who consistently educate themselves have learned to reinterpret these sensations. Instead of seeing discomfort as a stop sign, they've trained themselves to recognize it as a growth signal. They understand that every moment of mental challenge is a moment of neural expansion. Every struggle with new concepts is the feeling of their consciousness evolving, the identity shift that changes everything. The most profound difference between the 1% and the 99% isn't intelligence, privilege, or even discipline. It's identity. The 99% see themselves as people who learned something in the past. The 1% see themselves as people who are currently learning something right now. This isn't just a semantic difference. It's a fundamental shift in how your brain organizes reality. When you identify as someone who learned, past tense, your subconscious mind closes the door to new possibilities. When you identify as someone who learns, present tense, your brain remains open, curious, and hungry for growth. Neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza's research shows that when you change your identity at the neural level, you literally begin to think different thoughts, feel different emotions, and take different actions. Your brain starts to seek out information and experiences that are consistent with your new self-concept. Imagine waking up each morning not as someone who has to learn, but as someone who gets to learn. Not as someone struggling to acquire knowledge, but as someone whose very nature is to expand and evolve. This identity shift transforms learning from a chore into a celebration, from a burden into a blessing. Breaking free from the educational matrix. The traditional education system was never designed to create lifelong learners. It was designed to create compliant workers who could follow instructions and stay within predetermined boundaries. The moment you graduated, you were released into a world that requires exactly the opposite skills: creativity, adaptability, innovation, and continuous growth. This creates what I call educational whiplash, the jarring transition from a structured learning environment to complete educational freedom. With no roadmap for how to navigate this new territory, most people, faced with infinite learning possibilities and no external structure, simply stop learning altogether. But you have a choice. You can remain trapped in the programming of educational completion, or you can reprogram yourself for educational evolution. You can accept the limitation that your best learning years are behind you, or you can recognize that your most transformational learning years are just beginning. The research is clear. Adults who engage in continuous learning don't just maintain their cognitive abilities, they actually improve them. Studies show that older adults who commit to learning new skills demonstrate better memory, faster processing speed, and enhanced problem-solving abilities compared to their non-learning peers. This isn't just about staying mentally sharp as you age. This is about continuously becoming a more powerful version of yourself. Every day you choose to learn something new. You're not just adding information to your mental database. You're literally rewiring your brain for greater success, deeper fulfillment, and expanded possibilities. The quantum field of educational possibility. When you understand that learning isn't just about acquiring information, but about transforming your consciousness. Everything changes in the quantum field of pure potential. Every piece of knowledge you absorb shifts your vibrational frequency, aligning you with experiences and opportunities that match your expanding awareness. This is why people who commit to daily learning seem to attract lucky breaks and coincidences with remarkable frequency. They're not actually luckier. They're operating from an elevated state of consciousness that naturally magnetizes aligned experiences. The moment you decide to join the 1% who never stop learning, you step into a different stream of reality. You begin to see opportunities that were always there but invisible to your previous level of consciousness. You start to attract mentors, resources, and experiences that support your growth. You become part of an energetic community of lifelong learners who recognize and support each other's evolution. Your journey into the 1% begins with a single decision. Today, I choose to learn something new. Not because I have to, but because I am someone who learns. Not because I'm behind, but because I'm evolving. Not because I'm lacking, but because I'm expanding. The 99% stopped learning because they believed they were finished. You're about to start learning because you understand you're just beginning. Welcome to the Great Separation. Welcome to the 1%. Chapter 2. The Quantum Mind. Your brain as a field of infinite possibilities. Your brain is not a fixed organ. It's an expanding universe of infinite potentials. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez was 53 when he made a decision that would change everything he thought he knew about the human brain. After 20 years as a successful attorney, he decided to learn Mandarin Chinese. His friends thought he was having a midlife crisis. His family worried about his mental health. Even his doctor suggested that learning a new language at his age might be unrealistic. 18 months later, Marcus was not only fluent in Mandarin, but had also started his own international consulting firm, expanded his social circle to include fascinating people from around the world, and reported feeling more mentally sharp and creatively alive than he had in decades. Brain scans revealed something extraordinary. His brain had literally grown new gray matter, formed thousands of new neural connections, and activated regions that had been dormant for years. Marcus didn't just learn a language. He rewired his entire reality by understanding a profound truth that neuroscience is just beginning to reveal. Your brain isn't a computer running fixed software. It's a quantum field of pure potential, capable of infinite expansion and continuous reinvention throughout your entire life. The revolutionary science of neuroplasticity. For over a century, the scientific establishment held a devastating belief. The adult brain was essentially fixed. Once you reached a certain age, your neural development was complete, your intelligence was set, and your cognitive abilities could only decline. This neurological fatalism condemned millions of people to lives of intellectual limitation and gradual mental deterioration. Then came the neuroplasticity revolution that shattered everything we thought we knew about human potential. Dr. Norman Doidge's groundbreaking research revealed that the human brain possesses an almost miraculous ability to reorganize itself throughout life. Every time you learn something new, your brain doesn't just store that information in existing files. It literally creates new neural pathways, strengthens existing connections, and even generates new brain cells through a process called neurogenesis. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. The quantum nature of your brain means that these changes don't happen linearly or predictably. When you engage in conscious learning, you're not just adding information to a static system. You're participating in a dynamic field of possibility where thoughts become neural networks, and neural networks become your lived reality. Recent studies using advanced neuroimaging technology show that adult brains can develop new neural pathways in as little as 2 weeks of focused learning. Even more remarkable, these changes occur not just in the specific areas related to what you're learning, but throughout your entire brain, creating enhanced connectivity, improved processing speed, and expanded creative capacity. This means that every time you choose to learn something new, you're not just gaining knowledge. You're literally upgrading the hardware that creates your experience of reality. You're expanding the very organ through which you perceive, process, and interact with the world. The quantum field of consciousness. To truly understand the transformative power of conscious learning, we need to explore the quantum nature of consciousness itself. At the subatomic level, particles exist in what physicists call superposition, a state where all possibilities exist simultaneously until the moment of observation collapses them into a specific reality. Your brain operates according to similar quantum principles. Neuroscientist Dr. Stuart Hameroff's research suggests that consciousness itself emerges from quantum processes occurring within the microtubules of neurons. This means that your thoughts, your learning, and your very awareness exist in a field of infinite possibility before being collapsed into specific neural patterns and lived experiences. When you engage in conscious learning, you're doing more than absorbing information. You're literally selecting which possibilities from the quantum field of potential will become your reality. Every new concept you understand, every skill you develop, every insight you gain is a choice you're making about which version of yourself will emerge from the field of infinite possibilities. This is why people who commit to continuous learning often experience what seem like miraculous synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, and remarkable coincidences. They're not just lucky. They're operating from an expanded state of consciousness that allows them to perceive and attract possibilities that remain invisible to others, trapped in limited ways of thinking. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research with thousands of meditation students reveals that when people learn to access these expanded states of consciousness, they can literally rewire their brains to create new realities. Brain scans show increased activity in the frontal lobe associated with focused attention and intention, elevated gamma brainwave patterns linked to heightened awareness and insight, and enhanced connectivity between different brain regions. Your brain's infinite architecture. Traditional neuroscience viewed the brain as having roughly 86 billion neurons with a fixed number of possible connections. But quantum neuroscience reveals something far more extraordinary. The potential for neural connections in your brain exceeds the number of atoms in the known universe. Let that sink in for a moment. You have more potential neural connections in your brain than there are atoms in all the stars, planets, and galaxies we can observe. This means that your capacity for learning, growth, and transformation is literally infinite. Each time you expose yourself to new information, your brain begins forming what neuroscientists call neural assemblies, networks of neurons that fire together to encode and process that information. But here's the quantum aspect. These neural assemblies don't just store information passively. They actively influence how you perceive reality, what opportunities you notice, and what actions you feel inspired to take. When you learn about quantum physics, you're not just gaining knowledge about subatomic particles. You're creating neural networks that help you think in terms of possibility and uncertainty rather than limitation and fixed outcomes. When you study ancient wisdom traditions, you're not just acquiring philosophical concepts. You're building neural pathways that connect you to expanded states of consciousness and intuitive knowing. Richie Davidson's research at the University of Wisconsin demonstrates that even short-term learning experiences can create measurable changes in brain structure and function that persist for months or even years. This means that every book you read, every course you take, every conversation you have with someone who thinks differently than you do is literally sculpting your brain into a more powerful instrument of consciousness. The vibrational frequency of learning. From a quantum perspective, everything in the universe, including your thoughts and neural patterns, exists as vibrational frequencies. When you engage in learning, you're not just processing information. You're literally tuning your brain to new frequencies of possibility. Different types of learning create different vibrational signatures in your neural networks. Learning driven by fear, pressure, or external obligation creates lower frequency patterns associated with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These patterns actually inhibit neuroplasticity and limit your brain's ability to form new connections. But learning driven by curiosity, passion, and intrinsic motivation creates high-frequency patterns associated with elevated emotions and neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These neurochemical states don't just make learning more enjoyable. They actually accelerate neuroplasticity and enhance your brain's ability to integrate new information with existing knowledge. This is why people who love what they're learning seem to absorb information effortlessly, while those who are forcing themselves to learn struggle with retention and application. It's not about intelligence or natural talent. It's about the vibrational frequency at which their learning is occurring. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's research on positive emotions reveals that elevated emotional states create what she calls broaden and build effects in the brain. When you're learning from a place of joy and excitement, your brain literally becomes more open, more creative, and more capable of making innovative connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, reprogramming your learning identity. The most profound barrier to unleashing your brain's quantum potential isn't external. It's the limiting beliefs you hold about your own capacity to learn and grow. These beliefs, formed during your early educational experiences and reinforced by a culture that worships youth and fears aging, create what neuroscientists call neural grooves. Deeply ingrained patterns of thought that automatically limit your perceived possibilities. But here's the revolutionary insight. These limiting neural patterns are not permanent features of your brain. They're simply well-worn pathways that can be redirected through conscious intention and consistent practice. Every time you choose to learn something new despite feeling scared, overwhelmed, or too old, you're literally weakening those limiting patterns and strengthening new neural networks of possibility. The process of reprogramming your learning identity begins with understanding that your past educational experiences don't define your current learning capacity. Whether you struggled in school, felt like you weren't naturally intelligent, or were told you weren't good at certain subjects, these historical experiences are simply old data that has no bearing on your brain's current potential for growth and expansion. Dr. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research on mindset reveals that people who view intelligence as expandable rather than fixed demonstrate remarkable improvements in learning capacity, persistence in the face of challenges, and overall achievement. This isn't just positive thinking. Brain imaging studies show that people with growth mindsets literally have different patterns of neural activation when encountering difficulties, showing increased activity in areas associated with problem-solving and learning, rather than areas associated with threat detection and self-protection. The field effects of conscious learning. When you understand your brain as a quantum field, rather than a mechanical computer, you begin to recognize that your learning doesn't occur in isolation. It's part of a larger field of consciousness that connects you to the accumulated knowledge and wisdom of humanity itself. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic resonance suggests that when individuals learn new skills or concepts, they create morphic fields that make it easier for others to learn the same things. This might explain why certain discoveries and innovations often emerge simultaneously in different parts of the world, and why skills that were once considered incredibly difficult become progressively easier for new learners to master. This means that every time you commit to learning something new, you're not just expanding your own consciousness. You're contributing to the collective field of human knowledge and making it easier for others to access similar insights and abilities. Your personal learning journey becomes an act of service to the evolution of consciousness itself. Quantum physicist Dr. David Bohm proposed that consciousness operates as an implicate order, an underlying field of potential from which all experiences and realities emerge. When you engage in conscious learning, you're not just extracting information from books or teachers. You're accessing this deeper field of knowing and allowing new possibilities to unfold through your awareness. This is why breakthrough insights often come not through logical analysis, but through sudden moments of knowing that seem to arise from nowhere. Your brain, functioning as a quantum receiver, is capable of tuning into frequencies of information that exist beyond the boundaries of your individual mind, becoming a conscious co-creator. The ultimate implications of understanding your brain as a quantum field are profound. You are not a passive recipient of information, but a conscious co-creator of reality itself. Every choice you make about what to learn, how to learn, and why to learn is a decision about which version of yourself and which version of reality will emerge from the infinite field of possibilities. This responsibility is both exhilarating and sobering. It means that you cannot blame your circumstances, your genetics, your age, or your educational background for the limitations you experience. But it also means that you have access to unlimited potential for transformation, growth, and the creation of realities that most people believe are impossible. Dr. Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist who has spent decades exploring the intersection of consciousness and quantum mechanics, suggests that consciousness itself is the fundamental ground of being from which all material reality emerges. If this is true, then your conscious choice to learn and grow isn't just personal development. It's participating in the ongoing creation of reality itself. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you're not the same person who went to sleep tonight. The simple act of reading this chapter has already created new neural pathways, activated dormant potentials, and shifted your vibrational frequency toward expanded possibilities. Your brain is literally different now than it was when you started reading, and tomorrow you'll wake up with access to thoughts, insights, and opportunities that didn't exist in your reality before this moment. The question isn't whether your brain can change and grow. The science has definitively proven that it can. The question is, what will you choose to become? What possibilities will you select from the infinite field of potential? What version of reality will you co-create through your commitment to conscious learning? Your brain is waiting. The quantum field is responding. Your future self is calling. The only question that remains is, are you ready to answer? Chapter 3. The Magnetic Code of Education. Transforming knowledge into attracting force. Knowledge is power, but knowledge applied consciously is pure magic manifested. Elena Martinez was working as a hotel receptionist in Miami when she stumbled upon a YouTube video about cryptocurrency. Most people would have watched it once and moved on, but something different happened in Elena's consciousness. As she absorbed each concept about blockchain technology, digital currencies, and decentralized finance, she felt an electric excitement coursing through her body. Not just intellectual curiosity, but a visceral knowing that this information was somehow meant for her. 6 months later, Elena had become the youngest cryptocurrency advisor at a major financial firm, earning more in her first year than she had in the previous 5 years combined. But here's what's truly extraordinary. She didn't just study cryptocurrency. She became a living magnet for everything connected to that field. Mentors appeared in her life, investment opportunities presented themselves, and career doors opened that she never even knew existed. Elena discovered what the 1% of lifelong learners understand intuitively. There's a fundamental difference between consuming information passively and absorbing knowledge magnetically. When you learn with conscious intention and elevated emotion, you don't just gain information. You transform your entire energetic signature into a powerful attracting force that draws aligned opportunities into your reality. The hidden science of magnetic learning. Traditional education treats knowledge as a collection of facts to be stored in your mental filing system. But quantum science reveals something far more profound. Every piece of information you absorb doesn't just exist as neural data. It creates specific electromagnetic patterns that influence how reality organizes itself around you. Dr. Roland McCrady's research at the HeartMath Institute has discovered that your heart generates an electromagnetic field 60 times greater in amplitude than your brain, and 5,000 times stronger than any other organ in your body. This heart field extends beyond your physical body and interacts with the electromagnetic fields of other people and even the environment itself. When you learn something that truly excites you, when knowledge creates genuine passion and enthusiasm, your heart rhythm patterns become coherent, generating what scientists call optimal states that literally change the electromagnetic signature you're broadcasting to the world. You become a walking, breathing magnet for experiences and opportunities that match your elevated frequency. This isn't mystical thinking, it's measurable science. Using sophisticated equipment, researchers can detect the moment when someone shifts from passive information consumption to active, passionate learning. The electromagnetic field around their body literally changes, becoming more coherent, more powerful, and more influential in organizing the quantum field of possibilities around them. Think about the last time you learned something that genuinely thrilled you. Remember how ideas seemed to flow more easily, how related information began appearing everywhere, how people started mentioning relevant concepts in casual conversations. You weren't experiencing coincidence. You were witnessing your consciousness operating as a magnetic field, drawing aligned experiences into your reality. The emotional chemistry of attraction. The secret to magnetic learning lies not just in what you learn, but in how you feel while you're learning it. Your emotions are not just internal experiences. They're powerful chemical signals that influence every cell in your body and every electromagnetic field you generate. When you approach learning with excitement, curiosity, and passion, your body produces an elevated cocktail of neurotransmitters and hormones. Dopamine, motivation and reward, serotonin, confidence and well-being, oxytocin, connection and trust, and endorphins, natural euphoria. This chemical symphony doesn't just make learning more pleasurable. It literally transforms you into a magnet for success. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's research on positive emotions reveals that elevated emotional states create what she calls upward spirals of expansion. When you're learning in states of joy and excitement, you don't just absorb information more effectively. You actually become more attractive to other positive, successful, growth-oriented people who are operating at similar frequencies. Conversely, when you force yourself to learn from states of fear, obligation, or resistance, your body produces stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline that not only inhibit memory formation but actually create electromagnetic patterns that repel the very opportunities you're trying to attract. This is why two people can learn identical information and have completely different life outcomes. It's not about intelligence or natural talent. It's about the emotional frequency at which their learning is occurring. The person who learns with passion becomes magnetic. The person who learns with resistance becomes repelling. The intention-attention feedback loop. Magnetic learning operates through what I call the intention-attention feedback loop, a quantum mechanism where your conscious intention to learn specific information creates a heightened attention that literally reorganizes reality to deliver what you're seeking. When you set a clear intention to learn something new, you're not just making a mental decision. You're sending a specific signal into the quantum field of infinite possibilities. This intention acts like a radio frequency, tuning your consciousness to pick up information, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with what you're seeking to understand. Dr. Dean Radin's research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has demonstrated that focused intention can influence random events at the quantum level. This suggests that when you approach learning with clear intention and focused attention, you're literally influencing the probability of encountering the exact information and opportunities you need for your growth and success. But here's the crucial insight. This process only works when your intention is aligned with genuine passion and authentic curiosity. You cannot fake magnetic learning. Your subconscious mind and your energetic field respond only to authentic emotions and genuine intentions. When you try to force interest in subjects that don't truly excite you, you create internal resistance that actually blocks the magnetic effect. This is why following your genuine curiosity and passion is not just more enjoyable. It's more effective at creating real-world results. Your authentic interests are actually guidance signals from your higher consciousness, pointing you toward the knowledge and experiences that will serve your highest evolution and greatest contribution. The frequency of mastery. Different types of knowledge create different vibrational frequencies in your consciousness, and these frequencies determine what kinds of experiences and opportunities you attract into your life. Learning that comes from ego-driven desires to impress others or accumulate status creates lower frequency patterns that attract superficial achievements and short-term gains. But learning that comes from genuine service, authentic curiosity, and alignment with your deeper purpose creates high-frequency patterns that attract meaningful opportunities, synchronistic encounters, and experiences that contribute to long-term fulfillment and impact. Dr. David Hawkins spent decades researching the calibrated levels of human consciousness and discovered that different emotional and mental states correspond to specific, measurable frequencies. Learning motivated by love, joy, peace, and service calibrates at the highest frequencies and creates the most powerful magnetic effects. When Elena learned about cryptocurrency, she wasn't just seeking personal financial gain. She was genuinely fascinated by the technology's potential to create more equitable financial systems. This higher frequency motivation attracted opportunities that aligned not just with her personal success, but with her deeper values and vision for positive impact. The frequency of your learning motivation becomes the frequency of your life experiences. When you learn from lower frequencies like fear, greed, or competition, you attract experiences that reflect these energies: stress, struggle, and scarcity. When you learn from higher frequencies like passion, service, and growth, you attract experiences that reflect these energies: flow, abundance, and fulfillment, creating learning rituals that amplify magnetism. To transform ordinary learning into magnetic attraction, you need to create what I call learning rituals, specific practices that consistently elevate your emotional and energetic state while absorbing new information. These rituals don't just make learning more effective. They literally transform you into a magnet for success. The most powerful learning ritual begins with gratitude. Before engaging with any new information, take a moment to feel genuine appreciation for the opportunity to learn and grow. Gratitude instantly elevates your vibrational frequency and creates coherence in your heart rhythm patterns, optimizing your electromagnetic field for magnetic attraction. Next, set a clear intention not just for what you want to learn, but for how you want to feel while learning, and how you want this knowledge to serve your highest good and the good of others. This intention programming creates a specific frequency signature that attracts aligned experiences and opportunities. As you engage with the material, practice what I call embodied learning, allowing the information to create genuine excitement and enthusiasm in your body. Don't just understand concepts intellectually. Feel them emotionally, visualize their applications, and imagine how this knowledge will transform your life and your ability to serve others. Throughout the learning process, maintain awareness of synchronicities and insights that arise. Often, the most valuable aspects of magnetic learning come not from the formal material you're studying, but from the intuitive connections, creative ideas, and unexpected insights that emerge when your consciousness is in an elevated state. Finally, end each learning session with visualization and affirmation. See yourself successfully applying this new knowledge, feeling the emotions of achievement and contribution, and experiencing the reality you're creating through your expanded awareness. This practice embeds the learning at a cellular level and programs your subconscious mind to attract opportunities for application. The compound effect of magnetic knowledge. One of the most profound aspects of magnetic learning is its compound effect. Each piece of knowledge you absorb with conscious intention and elevated emotion doesn't just add to your information base. It exponentially amplifies your attracting power by creating new connections and possibilities you couldn't have imagined before. When you learn something new with magnetic intensity, it creates what systems theorists call emergent properties, new capabilities and insights that arise from the interaction of different knowledge systems in your consciousness. These emergent properties often manifest as breakthrough innovations, creative solutions, or unexpected opportunities that seem to come from nowhere. This is why Renaissance polymaths like Leonardo da Vinci were able to achieve extraordinary success across multiple fields. They understood that knowledge from one domain enriches and amplifies knowledge from all other domains, creating exponential increases in creative capacity and innovative potential. Kvartatorditur, Franz Johansson's research on innovation, reveals that the most groundbreaking discoveries and achievements occur at the intersection of different fields of knowledge. When you commit to magnetic learning across diverse subjects, not just for information collection but for consciousness expansion, you position yourself at these fertile intersections where breakthrough possibilities emerge. The compound effect also operates through what I call knowledge synchronicities. When you're learning with magnetic intensity, you begin to notice connections between seemingly unrelated subjects, unexpected applications for new concepts, and opportunities to combine knowledge from different domains in novel ways. Becoming a knowledge alchemist. The ultimate goal of magnetic learning is not just to accumulate information, but to become what I call a knowledge alchemist. Someone who can transform any information into wisdom, any concept into opportunity, and any learning experience into magnetic attraction for success and fulfillment. Knowledge alchemists understand that learning is not about memorizing facts, but about expanding consciousness. They approach every book, course, conversation, and experience as a potential catalyst for transformation, not just information acquisition. They ask not just, "What can I learn?" but "How can this learning transform me? And how can I use this knowledge to serve something greater than myself?" This alchemical approach to learning creates what quantum physicists call non-local effects, influences that extend beyond the immediate time and space of the learning experience. When you transform knowledge into wisdom through conscious application and service, you create ripple effects that attract aligned people, opportunities, and experiences across all areas of your life. The ancient alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, but they understood that this external transformation was merely a symbol of the internal transformation of consciousness. Modern knowledge. Alchemists recognize that every learning experience is an opportunity to transform the base metal of information into the gold of wisdom, and wisdom into the magnetic field of manifestation. The service-success connection. The most magnetic learners understand a profound secret. Knowledge becomes truly magnetic only when it's acquired and applied in service to something greater than personal gain. When your learning is motivated by genuine desire to contribute, create value, and serve others, it creates the highest frequency magnetic field possible. Dr. Adam Grant's research on motivation reveals that people who are motivated by purpose and service consistently outperform those motivated purely by personal gain. This isn't just about work performance. It's about life performance. When your learning serves a higher purpose, it attracts opportunities and resources that align with that purpose. Elena's cryptocurrency success wasn't just about her personal financial gain. She was genuinely excited about the technology's potential to democratize finance and create more equitable economic systems. This service-oriented motivation created a magnetic field that attracted mentors, opportunities, and resources aligned with both her personal success and her higher purpose. When you approach learning with the question, "How can this knowledge serve the world?" rather than "How can this knowledge serve me?" you tap into the most powerful magnetic frequencies in the universe, the frequencies of love, service, and contribution that naturally attract abundance, success, and fulfillment. The ultimate magnetic learning question is not, "What's in it for me?" but "What's in me for it?" When you learn with the intention of becoming a more valuable, capable, and conscious contribution to the world, you become irresistibly magnetic to everything you need to fulfill that intention. Your learning journey is not just personal development, it's preparation for service. Every skill you develop, every insight you gain, every piece of knowledge you magnetically absorb is equipping you to make a unique contribution that only you can make. When you understand learning as service preparation rather than just personal advancement, you unlock magnetic powers that most people never even know exist. Tomorrow you'll wake up with new knowledge, new neural pathways, and a new electromagnetic signature. The question is, what will you choose to learn? And how will you choose to let that learning transform you into a magnet for the life you're meant to live? Chapter 4. The Chemistry of Daily Transformation, Your Brain's Natural High. Every time you learn something new, your body releases the same chemistry of passion and love. Michael Chen had been battling depression for 3 years when his therapist suggested he try learning something completely new as part of his treatment. Skeptical but desperate, Michael decided to learn how to play the violin, something he'd always thought was impossible for someone with no musical talent. Within the first week of practice, something extraordinary began happening. The overwhelming fog of depression that had clouded his mind for years started lifting, not gradually, but in distinct moments of clarity that coincided with his learning breakthroughs. By the 3rd month, Michael was not only playing simple melodies, but had completely stopped taking antidepressants. His brain had literally rewired itself into a state of natural euphoria through the neurochemical cascade triggered by conscious learning. What Michael discovered, and what neuroscience is now proving, is that your brain is essentially a pharmacy capable of producing every mood-enhancing, performance-boosting, and life-transforming chemical you could ever need. The key to accessing this internal pharmacy isn't found in external substances or experiences. It's found in the simple, profound act of learning something new every single day. When you understand the neurochemical symphony that plays in your brain during conscious learning, you realize that people addicted to growth aren't just intellectually curious. They're literally addicted to the most powerful cocktail of natural chemicals available to human consciousness. The dopamine revolution in your brain. Dopamine has been misunderstood as simply the pleasure chemical, but cutting-edge neuroscience reveals its true function. Dopamine is the neurochemical of anticipation, motivation, and reward-seeking behavior. It's not released when you achieve something. It's released when you're in the process of learning and growing toward achievement. Dr. Robert Sapolsky's research at Stanford University shows that dopamine levels spike highest, not when you get what you want, but when you're 50% of the way toward getting it. This means that the learning process itself, that sweet spot between not knowing and mastering, is literally designed by nature to create optimal states of motivation and excitement. When you commit to learning something new every day, you're essentially giving yourself a daily dose of natural dopamine that creates sustainable motivation, enhanced focus, and genuine excitement about your future. Unlike external dopamine triggers, social media, shopping, substances, learning-generated dopamine creates lasting neural changes that build upon themselves, creating what neuroscientists call positive feedback loops. But here's the profound insight. Dopamine doesn't just make you feel good about learning. It literally rewires your brain to seek out more learning opportunities. Every time you experience the dopamine release from mastering a new concept or skill, your brain strengthens the neural pathways associated with growth-seeking behavior, making you naturally more curious, more open to challenges, and more resilient in the face of difficulty. This is why people who learn consistently seem to have unlimited energy and enthusiasm. They're not forcing themselves to stay motivated. They're riding the natural neurochemical wave created by their brain's reward system, responding to continuous growth and expansion. Michael's violin practice didn't just teach him music. It retrained his brain to naturally produce the chemistry of excitement, accomplishment, and forward momentum. instead of relying on external antidepressants to artificially adjust his brain chemistry. He learned to trigger his brain's natural antidepressant through the simple act of conscious learning. The serotonin confidence connection. While dopamine drives you toward learning, serotonin is the neurochemical that rewards you for the process. Often called the confidence chemical, serotonin is released when you experience a sense of mastery, accomplishment, or social recognition. But recent research reveals that serotonin plays an even more crucial role in the learning process. It creates the internal state of calm confidence that allows you to persist through challenges and integrate new knowledge effectively. Dr. Barry Jacobs at Princeton University discovered that serotonin levels directly correlate with what psychologists call mental flexibility, your ability to adapt your thinking when encountering new information that challenges existing beliefs or requires different approaches. Higher serotonin levels don't just make you feel more confident. They literally make you more capable of learning complex, challenging material. This creates a powerful upward spiral. As you learn new things and experience small wins and progress, your serotonin levels increase, which makes you more mentally flexible and capable of tackling even more challenging learning goals, which creates more success and higher serotonin levels, and so on. People who learn consistently develop what researchers call stable self-confidence, a deep inner knowing of their capability to figure things out, solve problems, and adapt to new situations. This isn't arrogance or false bravado. It's the neurochemical confidence that comes from repeatedly proving to yourself that you can learn, grow, and master new skills regardless of your starting point. The serotonin boost from learning is particularly powerful because it's earned rather than given. When you struggle through a difficult concept and finally understand it, when you practice a skill until you achieve competence, when you push through confusion to reach clarity, your brain rewards you with genuine confidence chemistry that can't be faked or borrowed from external sources. This natural confidence becomes magnetic. People are naturally drawn to individuals who radiate the calm, earned confidence that comes from continuous learning and growth. This magnetic quality attracts mentors, opportunities, and collaborations that accelerate your success in all areas of life. Oxytocin, the connection chemical of shared learning. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, is typically associated with romantic relationships and parental bonding. But emerging research reveals that oxytocin plays a crucial role in learning, particularly when that learning involves connection with others or contributes to something larger than yourself. Dr. Paul Zach's research at Claremont Graduate University shows that oxytocin levels spike when people engage in learning that has social meaning or contributes to relationships and community. When you learn something with the intention of sharing it, teaching it, or using it to serve others, your brain releases oxytocin, creating feelings of connection, empathy, and purpose. This is why group learning experiences, mentoring relationships, and educational communities are so powerful. They're not just providing information. They're triggering the neurochemical of human bonding, making the learning experience emotionally meaningful and memorable at a biological level. But oxytocin's role in learning goes deeper than social connection. Recent studies suggest that oxytocin enhances what neuroscientists call social learning, your ability to learn from observing others, understanding their perspectives, and integrating their knowledge into your own world view. Higher oxytocin levels literally make you more capable of learning from other people's experiences and wisdom. When you approach learning with the intention of connection, whether that's connecting with teachers, fellow learners, or the people you'll eventually serve with your knowledge, you trigger oxytocin release that makes the entire process more enjoyable, more effective, and more transformative. This is why the most successful lifelong learners often become teachers, mentors, or leaders in their fields. They understand intuitively that sharing knowledge and connecting with others through learning creates a neurochemical state that enhances their own capacity for continued growth and discovery. Endorphins, the natural high of mental challenge. Endorphins are your brain's natural opioids, typically released during physical exercise, laughter, or moments of achievement. But neuroscientist Dr. Arne Dietrich's research reveals that challenging mental activities, particularly learning that requires focus, persistence, and breakthrough moments, can trigger endorphin release comparable to what athletes experience during intense physical training. This learner's high is a real neurochemical phenomenon that explains why people can become genuinely addicted to intellectual challenges, creative problem-solving, and skill mastery. The brain literally rewards mental effort with natural euphoria, creating positive associations with challenge and growth that make continuous learning feel effortless and enjoyable. The endorphin release from learning is particularly powerful because it occurs not just during moments of achievement, but throughout the process of engaging with challenging material. Your brain doesn't wait until you've mastered something to reward you. It releases endorphins during the struggle, the confusion, and the gradual emergence of understanding. This biological design makes perfect evolutionary sense. Creatures that found learning and problem-solving rewarding were more likely to survive and thrive in changing environments. Your brain is literally designed to make growth and adaptation feel good, but most people never access this natural reward system because they avoid the mental challenges that trigger endorphin release. When you embrace learning challenges instead of avoiding them, when you lean into confusion instead of running from it, when you persist through difficulty instead of giving up, you're not just building knowledge, you're training your brain to associate challenge with reward, growth with pleasure, and expansion with euphoria. The GABA gateway to learning flow. States GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, responsible for calming neural activity and reducing anxiety. While this might seem counterintuitive to learning, optimal GABA levels are actually essential for entering what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow states. Those magical periods where learning becomes effortless, time disappears, and complex information integrates seamlessly into your consciousness. Dr. Judson Brewer's research at Yale University shows that GABA activity increases dramatically during meditative states and deep learning experiences, creating the calm, focused awareness necessary for absorbing and integrating complex information. Too little GABA creates anxiety and scattered attention. Too much creates lethargy and disengagement. But optimal GABA levels create the perfect neurochemical environment for accelerated learning. The beautiful thing about learning-induced GABA optimization is that it happens naturally when you approach learning with the right mindset. When you're genuinely curious rather than anxious, when you're exploring rather than forcing, when you're playing with ideas rather than struggling against them, your brain naturally produces the GABA levels necessary for optimal learning states. This is why the most effective learning often happens when you're relaxed, curious, and open, rather than tense, pressured, and forcing. The neurochemical environment for optimal learning is created not through effort and strain, but through relaxed focus and playful engagement with new information. People who master this balance, who can maintain calm alertness while engaging with challenging material, develop what I call learning flow mastery. They can enter optimal learning states at will, absorbing and integrating information at rates that seem almost supernatural to others. Norepinephrine, the attention amplifier. Norepinephrine, also known as noradrenaline, serves as both a neurotransmitter and hormone, playing a crucial role in attention, alertness, and memory formation. When you encounter something genuinely interesting or important to learn, your brain releases norepinephrine, sharpening your focus and enhancing your ability to encode the information into long-term memory. Dr. Lynn Nadel's research at the University of Arizona reveals that optimal norepinephrine levels create what neuroscientists call enhanced memory consolidation, the process by which new information becomes integrated into your existing knowledge networks. This isn't just better memory. It's accelerated learning that builds upon itself exponentially. But here's the key insight. Norepinephrine is released not in response to passive information consumption, but in response to information that your brain perceives as personally relevant and emotionally significant. This means that the more you can connect new learning to your goals, values, and genuine interests, the more norepinephrine your brain will produce, and the more effectively you'll learn. This is why people who learn with passion and purpose consistently outperform those who learn from obligation or external pressure. Their genuine interest triggers norepinephrine release that naturally optimizes their brain for accelerated learning and lasting retention. The norepinephrine response also explains why curiosity is such a powerful learning accelerator. When you approach new information with genuine curiosity, with real desire to understand and explore, your brain interprets this as personally significant and releases the neurochemicals necessary for optimal learning, creating your personal neurochemical symphony. Understanding the chemistry of learning transformation gives you incredible power to consciously orchestrate your brain's neurochemical symphony for optimal growth and development. You're not at the mercy of your moods or motivation levels. You have the ability to trigger specific neurochemical states through your approach to learning, to optimize dopamine for motivation and excitement. Focus on learning goals that are challenging but achievable, with clear progress markers that allow you to experience regular wins and forward momentum. Break complex skills into smaller components that provide frequent opportunities for accomplishment and reward. To enhance serotonin for confidence and persistence, celebrate your learning progress regularly and acknowledge the growth you've already achieved. Reflect on how your expanding knowledge and skills are increasing your capability and value in the world. To trigger oxytocin for connection and meaning, approach learning with service in mind. Consider how your new knowledge can benefit others, contribute to your community, or solve problems that matter to you. Share your learning journey with others, and seek out learning communities and mentorship relationships. To access endorphins for natural learning highs, embrace challenges and difficulties as opportunities rather than obstacles. Reframe confusion as excitement, struggle as growth, and breakthrough moments as natural rewards for your persistence. To optimize GABA for flow states, Create calm, distraction-free learning environments and approach new information with relaxed curiosity rather than anxious effort. Practice mindfulness and deep breathing before learning sessions to naturally enhance GABA production, to maximize norepinephrine for enhanced attention and memory. Connect everything you learn to your personal goals, values, and genuine interests. Ask yourself why this information matters to you and how it relates to your larger vision for your life. When you understand that your brain is designed to make learning feel incredible, that every neurochemical system supports and rewards growth and expansion, you realize that resistance to learning isn't natural. It's programmed. Your authentic nature is to be curious, to grow, to learn, and to evolve. And your brain provides the perfect chemical incentive system to support this natural drive. Tomorrow morning you have the opportunity to trigger this neurochemical symphony simply by choosing to learn something new. Your brain is waiting with its pharmacy of motivation, confidence, connection, euphoria, calm focus, and enhanced attention. The only question is, what will you choose to learn, and how fully will you allow yourself to experience the natural high of conscious growth and transformation? Chapter 5. Reprogramming Your Intelligence Identity. Breaking free from mental limitations, your intelligence is not a fixed number. It's an expanding energy that grows with your dedication. At age 7, Jennifer Williams was told by her second-grade teacher that she was not a math person after struggling with basic arithmetic. This single statement, delivered with the casual cruelty that only ignorance can produce, became the defining narrative of Jennifer's academic life. Throughout school, she avoided mathematics, convinced that some people were simply born with math brains and others weren't. 35 years later, Dr. Jennifer Williams holds 2 PhDs in theoretical physics and has published groundbreaking research in quantum mechanics that has changed our understanding of reality itself. What transformed her from someone who wasn't good at math to one of the world's leading mathematical minds wasn't a sudden discovery of hidden talent. It was the complete reprogramming of her beliefs about the nature of intelligence itself. Jennifer's story illustrates one of the most devastating forms of programming that limits human potential, the belief that intelligence is fixed, that learning ability is predetermined, and that some people are simply smart, while others are not. This intellectual mythology has imprisoned more human potential than perhaps any other limiting belief system in history. The revolutionary truth that neuroscience has now proven beyond doubt is this: intelligence is not a fixed trait you're born with. It's a dynamic capacity that expands with use and shrinks with neglect. Your brain doesn't care what grades you got in school, what tests told you about your IQ, or what limiting beliefs you've carried about your intellectual capacity. It only responds to what you feed it today, right now, in this moment. The great intelligence deception. The concept of fixed intelligence is one of the most successful psychological operations ever conducted on human consciousness. For over a century, the educational and psychological establishments have promoted the myth that intelligence can be measured by standardized tests, that IQ scores determine life outcomes, and that people are born with predetermined intellectual ceilings they cannot transcend. This mythology serves the status quo by convincing people to accept limitations that don't actually exist. If you believe your intelligence is fixed, you'll stop pushing against your perceived boundaries. You'll avoid challenges that might reveal your limitations. You'll settle for less than your potential because you've been programmed to believe that potential itself is limited. But the research reveals something radically different. Dr. Carol Dweck's decades of research at Stanford University has demonstrated that people who believe intelligence is expandable, growth mindset, consistently outperform people who believe intelligence is fixed mindset, regardless of their starting ability levels. This isn't just about performance. Brain imaging studies show that people with growth mindsets literally have different patterns of neural activation when facing challenges. When fixed mindset individuals encounter difficulty, their brains show increased activity in areas associated with threat detection and self-protection. They're literally experiencing intellectual challenges as dangers to avoid. When growth mindset individuals face the same challenges, their brains show increased activity in areas associated with learning, problem-solving, and neural growth. They experience challenges as opportunities for expansion. The implications are staggering. Your beliefs about intelligence don't just influence your behavior. They physically restructure your brain's response to learning opportunities. Every time you think, "I'm not smart enough for this," or "I'm not good at learning," you're literally programming your brain to shut down its learning mechanisms and avoid growth opportunities. Deconstructing the mythology of academic performance. One of the most insidious aspects of intelligence mythology is the equation of academic performance with intellectual capacity. Millions of brilliant minds have been convinced they're not smart because they didn't excel in traditional educational environments that were designed for conformity rather than genius cultivation. The traditional education system was created during the industrial age to produce compliant workers who could follow instructions and perform repetitive tasks. It was never designed to identify, nurture, or develop true intelligence, which is characterized by creativity, adaptability, original thinking, and problem-solving ability. Consider this. Albert Einstein was considered a poor student and didn't speak until age 4. Richard Branson has dyslexia and was a terrible student, but became one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Temple Grandin struggled with autism and social interactions, but revolutionized animal behavior science. Steven Spielberg wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until he was 60, having spent his entire academic career believing he was dumb. These individuals succeeded not because they overcame their learning disabilities, but because they recognized that traditional educational metrics had nothing to do with their actual intellectual capacity. They reprogrammed their beliefs about intelligence and discovered that their brains were perfectly designed for their unique forms of genius. Dr. Howard Gardner's research on multiple intelligences reveals that traditional IQ tests measure only a narrow slice of human intellectual capacity, primarily linguistic and logical mathematical intelligence. But humans possess at least 8 distinct types of intelligence: linguistic, logical mathematical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. This means that someone who struggles with traditional academic subjects might be a genius in spatial intelligence, architecture, engineering, art, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, athletics, dance, surgery, or interpersonal intelligence, leadership, counseling, sales. The tragedy is that our culture only recognizes and rewards certain types of intelligence while dismissing others as less valuable. The neuroplasticity revolution of self-concept. The discovery of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself throughout life, has completely demolished the scientific foundation for fixed intelligence beliefs. Every time you learn something new, your brain literally grows new connections. Every time you challenge yourself intellectually, you strengthen existing neural networks and create new ones. Dr. Alvaro Pascual Leone's research at Harvard Medical School using brain imaging technology shows that adult brains can develop new neural pathways in as little as 5 days of focused learning. Even more remarkably, these changes occur not just in the specific areas related to what you're learning, but throughout your entire brain, creating enhanced connectivity and improved overall cognitive function. This means that your current intellectual limitations are not permanent features of your brain. They're simply the result of which neural pathways you've developed so far. Every perceived weakness, every area where you believe you lack talent, every subject you think you can't understand, represents undeveloped neural territory that's waiting for your conscious attention and practice. The implications for personal transformation are profound. You're not stuck with the intellectual capacity you had yesterday. You're not limited by your past academic performance. You're not condemned to repeat the same thinking patterns that have created your current results. Your brain is a dynamic, evolving organ that responds immediately to new challenges and learning opportunities. When Jennifer finally understood this, she didn't gradually develop mathematical ability. She explosively unleashed mathematical genius that had been suppressed by decades of limiting beliefs. Her brain had always possessed the capacity for advanced mathematical thinking. It simply needed permission to develop those capacities. Identifying your intelligence. Programming before you can reprogram limiting beliefs about intelligence. You need to identify the specific programming that's running in your subconscious mind. Most of these beliefs were installed during childhood by well-meaning but misinformed teachers, parents, and peers who were themselves operating from fixed intelligence mythology. Take a moment to honestly examine your internal dialogue when you encounter learning challenges. Do you hear voices saying, "I'm not smart enough for this. I'm not good at this type of thing. Some people are just naturally gifted, and I'm not one of them," or "I'm too old to learn new tricks"? These aren't objective assessments of your capacity. They're programmed responses based on outdated beliefs about intelligence. Every time you repeat these internal narratives, you're reinforcing neural pathways that limit your learning potential and close your mind to growth opportunities. Notice also how you respond to other people's success and expertise. Do you immediately assume they have some special talent or advantage you lack? Do you create stories about why their achievements are possible for them but not for you? These external projections reveal your internal beliefs about the nature of intelligence and capability. Dr. Claude Steele's research on stereotype threat shows that simply being aware of negative stereotypes about your group's intellectual abilities can actually impair your performance on cognitive tasks. This means that limiting beliefs about intelligence don't just influence your motivation. They literally interfere with your brain's ability to function at its highest level. The good news is that this process works in reverse as well. When you consciously reprogram your beliefs about intelligence and learning capacity, you don't just change your attitude. You actually enhance your brain's performance and accelerate your learning ability. The reprogramming process, from limitation to liberation. Reprogramming your intelligence identity requires more than positive thinking. It requires a systematic approach that works with your brain's natural learning mechanisms to create new neural pathways and dissolve old limiting patterns. The first step is conscious awareness. Every time you catch yourself thinking or saying something that reinforces intelligence limitations, pause and consciously reframe the thought. Instead of, "I'm not good at this," practice thinking, "I'm learning this." Instead of, "This is too hard for me," practice thinking, "This is challenging my brain to grow." Instead of, "I'm not smart enough," practice thinking, "I'm developing my intelligence." This isn't just semantic wordplay. Neurolinguistic research shows that the language you use literally shapes the neural pathways in your brain. When you consistently use growth-oriented language, you create growth-oriented neural patterns that naturally seek learning opportunities and embrace challenges. The second step is evidence collection. Your subconscious mind has been collecting evidence for your intellectual limitations for years. Now you need to consciously collect evidence for your intellectual capacity. Start a learning journal where you record every new thing you understand, every skill you develop, every insight you gain. This practice trains your brain to notice growth and progress rather than focusing on gaps and limitations. The third step is identity expansion through visualization. Spend time each day visualizing yourself as someone who learns easily, thinks clearly, and solves problems creatively. See yourself understanding complex concepts, mastering new skills, and applying knowledge successfully. Feel the emotions of intellectual confidence and capability. This practice creates new neural pathways associated with intellectual empowerment. The fourth step is challenge graduation. Deliberately seek out learning challenges that are slightly beyond your current comfort zone. As you successfully navigate these challenges, your brain updates its assessment of your capabilities and becomes more willing to tackle even greater challenges. This creates an upward spiral of expanding confidence and capacity. The quantum field of infinite intelligence. When you truly understand the expandable nature of intelligence, you begin to recognize that you're not limited to the knowledge and capabilities currently stored in your individual brain. Through the quantum field of consciousness, you have access to infinite intelligence, the accumulated wisdom and knowledge of all humanity, available to any consciousness that knows how to tune into it. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic fields suggests that when individuals learn new skills or concepts, they create information fields that make it easier for others to access the same knowledge. This means that every breakthrough in human understanding becomes part of a collective intelligence field that you can tap into through expanded awareness. Many of history's greatest innovations and discoveries have come through what appears to be intuitive knowing rather than logical deduction. Nikola Tesla received complete visions of his inventions. Albert Einstein said his insights came through imagination rather than mathematical analysis. These individuals had learned to access intelligence beyond the boundaries of their individual minds. When you expand your identity beyond the limitations of personal intelligence and recognize yourself as a temporary individualization of infinite intelligence, learning becomes less about acquiring information and more about allowing knowledge to flow through your consciousness. You stop trying to force understanding and start creating the optimal conditions for wisdom to emerge. This shift from effortful learning to receptive learning transforms the entire experience. Instead of struggling against limitations, you're opening to possibilities. Instead of proving your intelligence, you're expressing your intelligence. Instead of learning from scarcity, you're learning from abundance. The Genius Activation Protocol. Every human being possesses areas of natural genius, combinations of interests, talents, and perspectives that are uniquely theirs. The tragedy is that most people never discover their genius areas because they're too busy trying to fix their perceived weaknesses rather than developing their natural strengths. Dr. Marcus Buckingham's research on strengths-based development shows that people who focus on developing their natural talents achieve exponentially greater success than those who focus on fixing their weaknesses. This doesn't mean ignoring areas that need development, but rather approaching improvement from a foundation of strength rather than a perception of deficit. The genius activation process begins with honest self-assessment. What types of learning come naturally to you? What subjects capture your genuine interest and curiosity? When do you experience flow states and lose track of time? What kinds of problems do you enjoy solving? These questions point toward your areas of natural intellectual strength. Next, give yourself permission to fully develop these strengths rather than dismissing them as not practical or not important. Your areas of natural genius are not accidents. They're indicators of how your unique consciousness is designed to contribute to the world. When you develop these areas to their fullest potential, you don't just become more capable. You become magnetic to opportunities that allow you to express your gifts. Finally, approach your weaker areas from a position of strength rather than deficiency. Instead of, "I'm bad at math," think, "My natural verbal intelligence can help me understand mathematical concepts through language and storytelling." Instead of, "I'm not creative," think, "My logical intelligence can help me understand the patterns and principles that underlie creativity." Creating your new intelligence identity. The ultimate goal of reprogramming your intelligence beliefs is not just to learn more effectively. It's to step into a completely new identity as someone whose intelligence is unlimited, expandable, and uniquely expressed through your individual consciousness. This new identity doesn't claim to know everything. It claims the capacity to learn anything. It doesn't pretend to be the smartest person in the room. It commits to being the most curious. It doesn't avoid challenges. It seeks them out as opportunities for expansion. When you truly embody this identity, learning becomes not something you do, but something you are. Intelligence becomes not something you have, but something you express. Growth becomes not an occasional activity, but a constant way of being. People will begin to notice something different about you. You'll radiate the confidence that comes from knowing you can figure anything out. You'll approach challenges with curiosity rather than anxiety. You'll engage in conversations with genuine interest in learning from others, rather than trying to prove what you already know. Most importantly, you'll begin to see the infinite intelligence that surrounds you everywhere. In every person you meet, every experience you have, every challenge you encounter, you'll recognize that the entire universe is designed to support your learning and growth, and that every moment offers an opportunity to expand your consciousness and express your unique form of genius. Your old story about intelligence was written by people who didn't understand the true nature of human potential. Your new story is being written by you, in collaboration with the infinite field of intelligence that flows through all consciousness. Tomorrow you wake up, not as someone with limited intellectual capacity, but as someone whose intelligence is unlimited, whose learning potential is infinite, and whose unique genius is waiting to be fully expressed in service to your highest vision and the world's greatest needs. The only question that remains is, what will you choose to learn, and how will you allow that learning to transform you into the intelligent, capable, and brilliant person you were always meant to be? Chapter 6. the sacred ritual of daily learning, programming your day for transformation. When you turn learning into a sacred ritual, you transform each day into a ceremony of rebirth. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Maria Santos begins what she calls her Renaissance Hour. For the past 3 years, she has devoted the first hour of each day to conscious learning, treating this time as sacred as prayer or meditation. She lights a candle, sits in the same chair, opens her journal, and immerses herself in whatever knowledge calls to her that day. Quantum physics, ancient philosophy, digital marketing, or poetry. This simple ritual transformed Maria from a struggling single mother working 2 minimum-wage jobs into the founder of 3 successful businesses and a sought-after consultant who speaks at international conferences. But the external success is just a reflection of the internal transformation that occurs when learning becomes a sacred daily practice rather than a casual occasional activity. What Maria discovered, and what ancient wisdom traditions have known for millennia, is that how you begin your day determines the energetic frequency and consciousness level at which you operate for the entire day. When you start each morning by expanding your mind and feeding your consciousness with new knowledge, you're not just learning information. You're programming your entire nervous system for growth, creativity, and elevated performance. The difference between the 1% who continuously evolve and the 99% who remain stagnant isn't intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It's the presence or absence of sacred learning rituals that consistently elevate consciousness and create conditions for transformation. The neuroscience of morning consciousness. Programming. Your brain exists in different states of consciousness throughout the day, with the most malleable and receptive state occurring during the first hour after waking. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman's research reveals that your brain produces specific brainwave patterns during this early morning period that are optimal for learning, memory consolidation, and neural rewiring. During the first 60-90 minutes after waking, your brain transitions from theta waves, associated with deep learning and creativity, through alpha waves, relaxed awareness, to beta waves, focused attention. This natural progression creates a unique window where your conscious mind is alert enough to focus, while your subconscious mind remains open to new programming. When you fill this sacred window with conscious learning, you're literally programming your brain's operating system for the entire day. The neural networks you activate during morning learning become the dominant patterns that influence your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors for the following 16-18 hours. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research with thousands of meditation students shows that people who engage in morning consciousness practices demonstrate measurable changes in brainwave patterns that persist throughout the day. They maintain higher levels of gamma waves, associated with heightened awareness and insight, increased coherence between different brain regions, and enhanced access to creative and intuitive states. But here's the profound insight. This morning, programming doesn't just influence your mental state. It literally changes your electromagnetic field and the frequency you're broadcasting to the world. When you begin each day by elevating your consciousness through learning, you become a magnet for experiences, opportunities, and people that match your elevated frequency. Maria's morning ritual doesn't just give her knowledge. It transforms her into the type of person who naturally attracts success, recognizes opportunities, and operates from inspired action rather than reactive behavior, creating sacred space for learning transformation. The physical environment where you engage in learning is far more important than most people realize. Your brain creates powerful associations between locations and states of consciousness. And when you consistently use the same space for sacred learning, that space becomes energetically charged with growth and transformation energy. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this principle and created temples, monasteries, and sacred groves specifically designed to support expanded consciousness and learning. Modern neuroscience confirms what mystics have always known. The environment directly influences brain function, creativity, and learning capacity. Dr. Sally Augustine's research on neuroarchitecture reveals that specific environmental factors can enhance or inhibit learning by up to 40%. Natural light increases focus and attention. Certain colors stimulate different types of thinking, and organized spaces promote clear mental organization. But the most powerful aspect of creating sacred learning space isn't physical, it's energetic. When you consistently use the same space with the same intention, you're literally programming that environment with the frequency of growth and expansion. Over time, simply entering that space begins to trigger elevated states of consciousness and enhanced learning capacity. Your sacred learning space doesn't need to be elaborate. It can be a simple corner of a room, a specific chair, or even a particular outdoor location. The key is consistency and intention. Every time you enter this space, you're telling your subconscious mind that it's time to expand, grow, and transform. Create your space with elements that naturally elevate your consciousness. Perhaps a candle for focus, plants for life energy, inspirational images for motivation, or objects that remind you of your learning goals. The specific elements matter less than your consistent intention to use this space for consciousness expansion. The energetic architecture of learning rituals. Effective learning rituals follow what I call the energetic architecture of transformation, a specific sequence that moves your consciousness from ordinary awareness to elevated learning states and then integrates new knowledge into your entire being. The first phase is preparation, creating the internal and external conditions for optimal learning. This begins with gratitude, acknowledging the opportunity to grow and expand your consciousness. Gratitude instantly elevates your vibrational frequency and creates coherence in your heart rhythm patterns, optimizing your electromagnetic field for learning absorption. Next is intention setting, clearly defining not just what you want to learn, but who you want to become through this learning. Your intention acts as a frequency selector, tuning your consciousness to attract and recognize information that serves your highest evolution. The more specific and emotionally charged your intention, the more powerfully it programs your reticular activating system to notice relevant learning opportunities throughout the day. The second phase is state elevation, consciously shifting from ordinary consciousness to expanded awareness. This might involve deep breathing to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, brief meditation to quiet mental chatter, or visualization to create optimal brain states for learning. The goal is to move from reactive survival mode to creative growth mode. During this phase, you're literally changing your brainwave patterns from beta, focused but often anxious, to alpha, relaxed awareness, with moments of theta, deep learning and insight. These slower brainwave states dramatically enhance your ability to absorb, integrate, and apply new information. The third phase is sacred consumption, engaging with learning material from an elevated state of consciousness. This isn't passive reading or listening, but active, conscious interaction with knowledge. You're not just consuming information. You're allowing it to transform your consciousness, create new neural pathways, and expand your identity. During sacred consumption, practice what I call embodied learning, feeling the information in your body, visualizing its applications, and connecting it emotionally to your goals and values. This multi-sensory approach creates stronger neural networks and deeper integration of new knowledge. The final phase is integration and activation, consciously programming your subconscious mind to apply and express this new knowledge throughout the day. This involves visualization, affirmation, and specific intention setting for how you'll use this knowledge to serve your highest good and the good of others. The biochemistry of ritual-based learning. When learning becomes a sacred ritual rather than a casual activity, it triggers profound changes in your brain chemistry that accelerate transformation and enhance performance. The ritual aspect, the consistent time, place, and process, creates what neuroscientists call contextual conditioning that primes your brain for optimal learning states. Dr. Robert Sapolsky's research shows that ritual behaviors trigger the release of specific neurotransmitters that enhance focus, memory, and emotional regulation. The predictability of ritual activates your brain's reward systems while reducing stress hormones that interfere with learning and memory formation. But the most powerful biochemical effect of learning rituals is the elevation of what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls elevated emotions, feelings like joy, gratitude, inspiration, and love that create optimal conditions for neural plasticity and growth. When you approach learning from these elevated emotional states, your brain produces the perfect chemical cocktail for accelerated transformation. The dopamine released during ritual-based learning is different from the dopamine triggered by external rewards like social media or shopping. Ritual dopamine is sustained, building, and ultimately satisfying in ways that create long-term motivation and genuine fulfillment. This is why people with consistent learning rituals seem to have unlimited energy and enthusiasm. They're riding waves of naturally produced motivation chemicals. The serotonin boost from ritual learning creates what researchers call stable confidence. Deep inner knowing of your capability to grow, adapt, and master new challenges. This isn't arrogant overconfidence, but earned confidence that comes from repeatedly proving to yourself that you can learn and evolve. Most importantly, ritual-based learning triggers the release of oxytocin, creating feelings of connection not just with the knowledge, but with your highest potential and deepest purpose. This biochemical bonding makes learning feel meaningful and sacred rather than obligatory and mundane. Customizing your personal learning ceremony. The most effective learning rituals are deeply personal, reflecting your unique personality, learning style, and spiritual orientation. There's no single right way to create a sacred learning practice. The key is authenticity, consistency, and genuine reverence for the transformative power of conscious education. Some people create elaborate ceremonies with specific music, incense, and formal procedures. Others prefer simple, minimalist approaches with just a few meaningful elements. The external form matters less than the internal intention and the consistency of practice. Morning mystics might begin with meditation, light candles, and read wisdom texts while watching the sunrise. Their ritual honors the sacred nature of dawn as a time of renewal and possibility, connecting their learning to the natural rhythms of the earth and cosmos. Evening, philosophers might create nighttime rituals around reflection, journaling, and studying subjects that inspire deep thinking and contemplation. They use the quiet, introspective energy of evening to integrate the day's experiences with new knowledge and wisdom. Movement learners might combine learning with walking, yoga, or other physical activities that help integrate knowledge into their body as well as their mind. They understand that true learning involves the whole being, not just the intellect. Social learners might create rituals around learning communities, discussion groups, or teaching others. They honor the interconnected nature of knowledge and use relationship as a vehicle for growth and understanding. The key elements that make any learning ritual sacred and transformative are consistency. The same time and place creates powerful conditioning that naturally elevates your consciousness and optimizes your brain for learning. Intention, clear purpose and direction that connects your learning to your deepest values and highest vision for your life. Reverence, genuine respect for the transformative power of knowledge and the privilege of being able to learn and grow. Embodiment, engaging your whole being in the learning process, not just your analytical mind. Integration, conscious commitment to applying and expressing what you learn in service to your growth and contribution to the world. The ripple effects of sacred learning practice. When learning becomes a sacred ritual in your life, the transformation extends far beyond the knowledge you acquire. The daily practice of consciousness expansion creates ripple effects that touch every area of your experience and influence everyone you encounter. The most immediate effect is what I call elevated baseline consciousness, a sustained increase in your normal level of awareness, creativity, and intuitive insight. Instead of operating from reactive, survival-based consciousness most of the time, with occasional moments of clarity, you begin operating from clear, creative consciousness most of the time, with only occasional dips into reactive patterns. This elevated baseline attracts different experiences, opportunities, and relationships. People notice something different about you, a quality of presence, wisdom, and calm confidence that's naturally magnetic. You begin attracting mentors, collaborators, and opportunities that align with your expanding consciousness and growing capabilities. Your decision-making improves dramatically because you're accessing more of your intelligence and intuitive wisdom. You make choices from expanded awareness rather than fear-based reactivity, leading to outcomes that serve your long-term growth and fulfillment rather than just immediate comfort or security. Perhaps most importantly, you become a catalyst for growth and transformation in others. Your consistent commitment to learning and evolution gives others permission to do the same. You model what's possible when someone dedicates themselves to continuous consciousness expansion, inspiring others to begin their own sacred learning practices. Dr. Sheldrake's research on morphic fields suggests that when individuals establish new patterns of consciousness and behavior, they make it easier for others to access similar states. Your sacred learning ritual doesn't just transform you. It contributes to the collective field of human potential and makes conscious learning more accessible to everyone. Programming your day through morning learning. The specific time you choose for your learning ritual significantly impacts its transformative power. But morning practice offers unique advantages that align with natural brain rhythms and daily energy cycles. When you begin each day by feeding your consciousness with knowledge, wisdom, and inspiration. You're literally programming your mental and emotional operating system for the entire day. Your morning learning session becomes the lens through which you interpret and respond to everything that follows. If you start the day by expanding your understanding of creativity, you'll notice and seize creative opportunities throughout the day. If you begin with studies in leadership, you'll naturally step into leadership situations and make leadership choices. This isn't positive thinking or wishful manifestation. It's practical neuroscience. The neural networks you activate during morning learning become the dominant patterns that influence your perception, decision-making, and behavior for hours afterward. Maria's 3 businesses didn't emerge from business school or entrepreneurship courses. They emerged from her morning studies of quantum physics, which taught her to think in terms of infinite possibilities rather than limited options. Her understanding of philosophy gave her clarity about her values and purpose. Her exploration of ancient wisdom traditions provided the patience and persistence needed to build something meaningful. Each morning, learning session doesn't just add to your knowledge base, it transforms you into the type of person who naturally creates the life you desire. You become someone who thinks differently, perceives more possibilities, and takes inspired action from expanded awareness rather than reactive behavior from limited consciousness. The Sacred Learning Covenant. Creating a truly transformative learning ritual requires what I call a sacred learning covenant, a deep, spiritual-level commitment to your own growth and evolution that transcends motivation, mood, or external circumstances. This covenant isn't made to a teacher, institution, or external authority. It's made to your highest self, to the infinite intelligence that flows through you, and to the unique contribution you're here to make to the world. It's a recognition that your consciousness expansion serves not just you, but everyone your life touches. When you make this covenant, learning stops being something you do when you feel like it, and becomes something you are committed to, regardless of how you feel. It becomes a sacred responsibility, not because someone else expects it, but because your soul demands it. This covenant transforms resistance into reverence, obligation into opportunity, and effort into flow. You stop asking, "Do I have to learn today?" and start asking, "What does my consciousness want to explore today?" You stop approaching learning as work and start experiencing it as worship. Worship the infinite intelligence that created you and flows through you. Your sacred learning ritual becomes your daily ceremony of renaissance, rebirth, and renewal. Each morning, you wake up, not as the same person who went to sleep, but as someone ready to expand, evolve, and express new levels of wisdom, capability, and contribution. The question isn't whether you have time for sacred learning. It's whether you can afford not to invest in the daily expansion of your consciousness, your future self, your dreams, your contribution to the world, and everyone you're meant to serve are all waiting for you to commit to the sacred ritual of daily learning. Tomorrow morning, you have the opportunity to begin this covenant with yourself. The candle is ready, the chair is waiting, and your consciousness is eager to expand. The only question is, are you ready to treat your learning as sacred as your breathing, as essential as your heartbeat, and as transformative as your greatest dreams? Chapter 7. The Magnetic Selection. Choosing what your soul wants to learn. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are through what you study. David Park was a successful software engineer who had everything society told him to want: 6-figure salary, prestigious job at a tech giant, expensive car, and a downtown apartment. But every morning he woke up with a hollow feeling in his chest, as if he was living someone else's life. The work that once excited him felt mechanical and meaningless. One evening, while mindlessly scrolling through online courses, David felt a strange pull toward a class on mycology, the study of fungi. He couldn't explain why this random subject captivated him, but something deep inside urged him to enroll. Within weeks, he was spending every free moment studying mushroom cultivation, forest ecology, and sustainable agriculture. 18 months later, David had left his corporate job and started a mushroom farming business that not only provided him with profound fulfillment, but also became a pioneering model for urban sustainable food production. More importantly, he had discovered what it felt like to learn from authentic passion rather than external expectation, and that discovery transformed everything about his life. David's story illustrates one of the most crucial aspects of magnetic learning, the profound difference between learning what you think you should study and learning what your soul is calling you to explore. When you align your learning with your authentic interests and deeper purpose, you don't just acquire information. You step into alignment with your true nature and unlock capacities you never knew you possessed. The soul's curriculum versus society's agenda. From the moment you entered school, you were taught to value certain subjects over others, to pursue practical knowledge over impractical interests, and to choose learning paths based on external validation rather than internal guidance. This educational programming created a fundamental disconnection between what your mind thinks it should learn and what your soul knows it needs to learn. Society's agenda for your learning is based on economic utility, social status, and conventional definitions of success. It values information that can be monetized, skills that fit existing job categories, and knowledge that maintains current systems and structures. This agenda produces competent workers but rarely produces fulfilled human beings or innovative pioneers. Your soul's curriculum, on the other hand, is based on your unique purpose, your deepest gifts, and your highest contribution to the world. It draws you toward knowledge that expands your consciousness, skills that express your authentic nature, and wisdom that serves your spiritual evolution and service to others. Carol Adrienne's research on life purpose reveals that people who follow their authentic interests and passions, even when they seem impractical or unusual, consistently create more innovative solutions, experience greater fulfillment, and make more significant contributions than those who pursue conventional paths based on external expectations. The disconnect between these two curricula creates what I call learning misalignment. The exhausting experience of forcing yourself to study subjects that don't resonate with your authentic nature. This misalignment doesn't just make learning unenjoyable. It actually blocks your access to your natural intelligence and creative capacity. When David was studying computer science because it was practical and well-paying, he was working against his authentic interests and natural talents. When he discovered mycology, he was working with his innate fascination with natural systems and sustainable solutions. The difference wasn't just in motivation. It was in the activation of his natural genius. The resonance, recognition system. Your body and intuition contain a sophisticated guidance system that can instantly recognize learning opportunities that align with your highest path. This resonance recognition system operates through physical sensations, emotional responses, and intuitive knowing that occur when you encounter knowledge that serves your authentic evolution. When you think about or encounter learning material that's aligned with your soul's curriculum, you typically experience physical expansion. Your chest opens, breathing deepens, posture naturally straightens. Emotional elevation, feelings of excitement, curiosity, or calm knowing arise. Mental clarity. Thoughts become clearer and more focused. Energetic activation. You feel more awake, alert, and alive. Time distortion. Hours pass like minutes when you're engaged with the material. Conversely, when you encounter learning that's misaligned with your authentic path, you experience physical contraction, chest tightens, breathing becomes shallow, shoulders slump. Emotional resistance, feelings of boredom, anxiety, or resentment emerge. Mental fog, difficulty concentrating or retaining information. Energetic depletion, you feel tired, drained, or agitated. Time drag. Minutes feel like hours when you're forcing engagement, Dr. Antonio Damasio's neuroscience research reveals that these physical and emotional responses aren't just subjective experiences. They're sophisticated information processing systems that your brain uses to evaluate whether situations and opportunities serve your well-being and authentic expression. Your body literally knows what's right for you before your mind figures it out. Learning to trust and follow these somatic signals is one of the most practical skills you can develop for creating a life of fulfillment and contribution. The Curiosity Compass navigation system. Genuine curiosity is not a luxury or distraction. It's your consciousness guiding you toward the knowledge and experiences necessary for your highest evolution and greatest contribution. What captures your authentic interest is never random. It's always connected to your deeper purpose and unique gifts. Dr. Todd Kashdan's research on curiosity reveals that following genuine interests leads to enhanced creativity, improved problem-solving abilities, increased resilience, and greater life satisfaction. But more importantly for magnetic learning, curiosity creates optimal brain states for accelerated learning and innovative thinking. When you're genuinely curious about something, your brain produces the perfect neurochemical cocktail for learning: dopamine for motivation, norepinephrine for enhanced attention, and acetylcholine for focused learning and neuroplasticity. This natural chemical state makes learning effortless, enjoyable, and highly effective. Your curiosity compass operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Surface. Curiosity attracts you to specific topics, skills, or subjects that seem immediately interesting or relevant to your current situation. Deep curiosity draws you toward fundamental questions about existence, purpose, and the nature of reality that connect to your spiritual and philosophical evolution. Service curiosity pulls you toward knowledge that helps you serve others, solve problems, or contribute to the world in meaningful ways. Integration. Curiosity guides you toward learning that helps you synthesize and apply knowledge you've already acquired in new and innovative ways. The key to using your curiosity compass effectively is learning to distinguish between authentic curiosity, which arises from your deeper nature, and manufactured curiosity, which is created by marketing, social pressure, or the fear of missing out. Authentic curiosity has a quality of calm excitement and sustained interest. It draws you forward with gentle persistence rather than frantic urgency. You can engage with it for hours without feeling drained, and it often connects to other interests and passions in surprising ways. Manufactured curiosity creates anxiety, urgency, and comparison with others. It promises quick fixes or magical solutions, and it often disappears as quickly as it appeared, leaving you feeling empty or disappointed. The Alignment Assessment Protocol. Before committing significant time and energy to any learning path, it's essential to assess whether that path aligns with your authentic interests and serves your highest evolution. This Alignment Assessment Protocol helps you distinguish between learning that will energize and transform you and learning that will drain and distract you. The Passion Test. When you think about studying this subject, do you feel genuine excitement and anticipation, or do you feel obligation, pressure, or anxiety? Your emotional response to the idea of learning something is often more accurate than your rational analysis of whether you should learn it. The Energy Assessment. Imagine yourself spending significant time engaged with this material. Does the thought energize you or deplete you? Does it make you want to dive deeper or find reasons to avoid it? Your energy is one of your most precious resources. Invest it only in learning that genuinely inspires you. The Integration Shadow Inquiry. How does this learning connect to your existing interests, values, and goals? Does it build upon and enhance what you already know, or does it feel completely disconnected from your authentic path? The most powerful learning creates synergies with your existing knowledge and interests. The Service Connection. How might this knowledge serve others and contribute to the world? Learning that connects to your desire to serve something greater than yourself creates the highest frequency magnetic fields and attracts the most meaningful opportunities. The Future Self-Visualization. Imagine yourself 1 year from now having fully integrated this knowledge. Does this future version of yourself feel more authentic, capable, and aligned with your true nature? Or does it feel like you're becoming someone else's idea of who you should be? The Resistance. Recognition. What internal resistance or external objections arise when you consider pursuing this learning? Sometimes resistance indicates misalignment, but sometimes it indicates that this learning will challenge you to grow beyond your comfort zone in exactly the ways you need to evolve. The Synthesis Strategy. Creating your personal learning architecture. The most magnetic learners don't just follow random interests. They consciously create what I call a personal learning architecture that synthesizes their various interests into a coherent system of growth and contribution. This architecture honors both their authentic curiosities and their desire to serve something greater than themselves. Dr. Franz Johansson's research on innovation reveals that breakthrough discoveries and innovations most often occur at the intersection of different fields of knowledge. When you consciously design your learning to explore multiple interconnected subjects, you position yourself at these fertile intersections where new possibilities emerge. Your personal learning architecture consists of 4 interconnected domains. Core Mastery. The 1-2 primary subjects or skills that represent your deepest interests and natural talents. These are areas where you're committed to developing genuine expertise and making significant contributions. Adjacent explorations, subjects that complement and enhance your core mastery areas. These create unexpected connections and innovative applications of your primary knowledge. Horizon scanning, emerging fields, technologies, or perspectives that might become important to your core areas in the future. This keeps you ahead of trends and positions you to recognize new opportunities. Soul nourishment, learning that feeds your spirit, expands your consciousness, and connects you to meaning and purpose beyond practical applications. This might include philosophy, spirituality, arts, or wisdom traditions. David's learning architecture combined his core mastery in sustainable agriculture with adjacent explorations in business and marketing, horizon scanning of biotechnology and urban planning, and soul nourishment through studying indigenous wisdom traditions about humanity's relationship with nature. This integrated approach created unexpected synergies that wouldn't have emerged from studying any single subject in isolation. His business success came not just from understanding mushroom cultivation, but from synthesizing ecological wisdom, business acumen, technological innovation, and spiritual connection to the earth. The synchronicity signal system. When you're aligned with your soul's curriculum, the universe begins to conspire to support your learning journey through what appear to be meaningful coincidences and synchronicities. These synchronicities aren't random events. They're signals that you're on the right path and feedback from the quantum field responding to your authentic intentions. Dr. Bernard Beitman's research on coincidences reveals that meaningful synchronicities occur most frequently when people are pursuing paths that align with their authentic nature and serve their highest good. These events aren't supernatural. They're natural responses from a universe that supports conscious evolution and authentic expression. Common synchronicity signals include resource magnetism. Books, courses, teachers, and learning opportunities related to your authentic interests begin appearing in your life through unexpected channels. Mentor manifestation. People who can guide and support your learning journey show up at exactly the right times, with exactly the knowledge or connections you need. Opportunity alignment. Career, business, or service. Opportunities emerge that allow you to apply and expand your authentic learning interests. Connection creation. You meet other people who share your interests or complement your learning path, creating mutually supportive learning communities. Insight, integration. Different pieces of knowledge you've been studying suddenly connect in breakthrough moments of understanding that illuminate new possibilities. When you notice these synchronicities, pay attention. They're indicators that you're aligned with your authentic learning path and that the universe is supporting your evolution. The more you acknowledge and follow these signals, the more frequently and powerfully they appear. The service integration. Imperative. The most magnetic learning occurs when your authentic interests align with your desire to serve something greater than yourself. Knowledge acquired purely for personal gain or ego enhancement has limited transformative power, but knowledge pursued in service to others and the world creates powerful magnetic fields that attract resources, opportunities, and support. Dr. Adam Grant's research on motivation shows that people who pursue learning and work with service orientation consistently outperform those motivated purely by personal benefit. This isn't just about external achievement. Service-oriented learning creates deeper fulfillment, greater resilience, and more innovative thinking. When you approach learning with the question, how can this knowledge serve the world, rather than how can this knowledge serve me, you tap into what I call service magnetism, the most powerful attracting force in human consciousness. Service magnetism operates because universal support. The quantum field responds to intentions that serve the greater good by providing resources and opportunities that support those intentions. Collaborative attraction. Other service-oriented people naturally gravitate toward and want to support your learning and growth. Purpose. Activation. Learning in service to others activates your sense of meaning and purpose, which enhances motivation, creativity, and persistence. Legacy creation. Knowledge pursued for service creates lasting value that extends beyond your individual life and contributes to human evolution. David's mycology studies became magnetic, not just because they aligned with his interests, but because they connected to his deep desire to create sustainable solutions for food production and environmental healing. This service orientation attracted mentors, investors, customers, and collaborators who shared his vision. Designing your soul-aligned learning path. Creating a learning path aligned with your soul's curriculum requires both intuitive wisdom and practical planning. You need to honor your authentic interests while also ensuring that your learning serves your growth and contributes to the world. Begin by conducting a thorough authentic interest inventory. List everything that has ever genuinely fascinated you, regardless of how practical or socially acceptable it might be. Include childhood interests that were discouraged, subjects you've always wanted to explore but never had time for, and topics that make you lose track of time when you encounter them. Next, identify the common threads that connect these seemingly disparate interests. Often, your various curiosities are actually different expressions of deeper themes or purposes. Look for patterns in the types of problems you're drawn to solve, the kinds of beauty that inspire you, or the aspects of human experience that most fascinate you. Conduct a purpose alignment assessment by asking yourself, if I could use my learning to solve one problem or serve one need in the world, what would it be? Your authentic learning path should ultimately contribute to addressing the problems you care most deeply about solving. Create your learning vision statement, a clear, inspiring description of who you want to become and how you want to serve through your learning journey. This vision becomes your North Star, helping you evaluate opportunities and stay aligned with your authentic path. Design your growth architecture, the specific combination of subjects, skills, and wisdom that will best serve your vision and authentic expression. Remember to include core mastery areas, adjacent explorations, horizon scanning, and soul nourishment. Finally, establish your alignment practices, regular activities that help you stay connected to your authentic interests and adjust your learning path as you evolve. This might include meditation, journaling, nature time, or regular conversations with trusted mentors or friends. The courage to follow your authentic path. Perhaps the greatest challenge in following your soul's curriculum is the courage to trust your authentic interests, even when they don't align with external expectations or conventional definitions of success. This courage is essential because your unique learning path is exactly what the world needs from you. Your authentic interests aren't random or selfish. They're guidance from your higher consciousness about how you're meant to contribute to human evolution and planetary healing. When you follow this guidance, you're not being impractical or self-indulgent. You're being responsible to your deepest purpose and highest potential. The world doesn't need another person pursuing someone else's idea of success. It needs you pursuing your authentic interests with full dedication and service orientation. Your unique combination of interests, talents, and perspectives represents a contribution that only you can make. Every great innovator, artist, leader, and change-maker in history followed their authentic interests despite external pressure to conform. They understood that their genuine curiosity was actually guidance toward their greatest contribution. Tomorrow, You have the opportunity to choose learning that aligns with your soul rather than society's expectations. You can trust your authentic interests, follow your curiosity compass, and design a learning path that serves both your evolution and your contribution to the world. The question isn't whether you're qualified to follow your authentic learning path. You're the only person qualified to walk your unique path. The question is whether you have the courage to trust your inner guidance and the commitment to serve something greater than yourself through your learning journey. Your soul is calling you towards specific knowledge and wisdom. Are you ready to answer? Chapter 8. Overcoming Mental and Emotional Resistance. The Alchemy of Growth. Your resistance to new knowledge is just your ego trying to keep you small and safe. Sarah Mitchell stood at the threshold of her dream. At 42, she had finally decided to pursue her lifelong passion for marine biology. She had saved money for graduate school, researched programs, and even contacted professors. But as she sat staring at the application form on her computer screen, a familiar voice in her head began its relentless assault. You're too old. You're not smart enough. Real scientists started when they were young. You'll embarrass yourself. You're being ridiculous. For 3 months, Sarah battled this internal resistance. Some days she felt inspired and capable. Other days, she felt defeated before she even started. The application deadline passed, then another program's deadline, and another. Finally, Sarah realized that her greatest enemy wasn't the challenging coursework, the competitive admissions process, or the financial sacrifice. It was the voice in her own mind that was terrified of growth, change, and the possibility of failure. Once she understood that resistance was simply fear wearing a mask of rationality, she developed strategies to transform that resistance into fuel for her journey. 2 years later, Dr. Sarah Mitchell published her first research paper on coral reef restoration and was invited to speak at international marine conservation conferences. The resistance hadn't disappeared. She had learned to dance with it, to honor its protective intentions while refusing to let it limit her evolution. Sarah's story illustrates one of the most crucial skills for lifelong learning, the ability to recognize, understand, and alchemically transform the resistance that arises whenever you stretch beyond your familiar identity and comfortable limitations. The neuroscience of learning resistance. Resistance to learning and growth isn't a character flaw or sign of weakness. It's a sophisticated survival mechanism that evolved to keep our ancestors alive in dangerous environments. Your brain's primary job isn't to make you happy or help you grow. It's to keep you safe. And from your nervous system's perspective, the known is always safer than the unknown. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on predictive processing reveals that your brain is constantly creating predictions about what's going to happen next based on past experiences. When you encounter new learning challenges that don't match your brain's predictions, your nervous system interprets this unpredictability as a potential threat and activates protective responses designed to get you back to familiar territory. This neurological threat detection explains why learning something genuinely new often feels uncomfortable, overwhelming, or even frightening. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, literally cannot distinguish between the discomfort of intellectual challenge and the danger of physical threat. Both activate the same survival responses: fight, flight, or freeze. When you encounter learning resistance, you're not experiencing personal failure. You're experiencing the normal, predictable response of a nervous system that's trying to protect you from the unknown. The key to transformation isn't eliminating this response, but learning to recognize it, understand its protective intention, and consciously choose growth despite the discomfort. Dr. Rick Hanson's neuroscience research shows that the brain has what he calls a negativity bias. It's approximately 5 times more sensitive to negative experiences than positive ones. This means that the mental discomfort of learning challenges registers much more intensely than the satisfaction of learning progress, creating a neurological deck stacked against growth and change. Understanding this biological reality gives you tremendous power. When resistance arises, you can recognize it as an predictable neurological response rather than valid evidence that you should stop learning or that you're not capable of growth. The 5 faces of learning. Resistance. Learning resistance rarely appears as a direct voice saying, "Don't learn." Instead, it manifests through sophisticated psychological strategies that make avoiding growth seem rational, necessary, or even noble. Recognizing these patterns allows you to see through resistance's disguises and choose conscious response rather than unconscious reaction. The perfectionist's paralysis tells you that you can't begin learning until conditions are perfect, until you have enough time, until you find the perfect teacher or program, or until you're absolutely certain you'll succeed. This resistance strategy keeps you trapped in endless preparation and research without ever taking the first step toward actual growth. The perfectionist voice sounds reasonable. I just want to make sure I'm doing this right. But perfectionism is actually fear disguised as high standards. It's your ego's attempt to avoid the vulnerability and messiness that's inherent in genuine learning and growth. The imposter syndrome saboteur convinces you that you don't belong in learning environments with real experts, that you'll be discovered as a fraud, or that you're somehow fundamentally different from people who succeed in your areas of interest. This resistance creates artificial barriers between you and the knowledge or communities you need for growth. The imposter voice whispers, "Who are you to think you could learn this? Other people are naturally gifted. You're just pretending." But imposter syndrome is actually evidence that you're growing beyond your familiar identity, which is exactly what learning is supposed to do. The overwhelmer floods you with awareness of everything you don't know, making learning feel impossible rather than exciting. Instead of taking learning one step at a time, this resistance shows you the entire mountain you need to climb and convinces you that the journey is too difficult to begin. The overwhelmed voice shouts, "There's too much to learn. You'll never catch up. It's too complicated." But overwhelm is actually excitement without breath. It's your consciousness recognizing vast possibilities, but forgetting that all learning happens one moment, one concept, one insight at a time. The rationalization relativist creates logical-sounding reasons why learning isn't necessary, practical, or worthwhile. This resistance is particularly sophisticated because it uses your intelligence against your growth, creating seemingly valid arguments for maintaining the status quo. The rationalization voice argues, "You don't really need to know this. It's not practical. You're fine the way you are. Learning is for younger people." But rationalization is actually fear wearing the mask of wisdom, using logic to justify staying small and safe. The comparison crusher destroys motivation by constantly measuring your progress against other people's achievements, making you feel behind, inadequate, or unworthy of success. This resistance turns learning into competition rather than personal evolution. The comparison voice judges, Look how much more advanced they are. You're starting too late. You'll never be as good as them. But comparison is actually misplaced focus. It's looking at other people's outsides instead of tending to your own growth process. The resistance, alchemy process. The most powerful approach to learning resistance isn't fighting it, ignoring it, or trying to eliminate it. It's transforming it through what I call resistance alchemy. This process converts the energy of resistance into fuel for accelerated growth and authentic transformation. Step 1. Recognition and honoring. When resistance arises, pause and acknowledge its presence without judgment. Say something like, "I notice resistance arising, and I honor its protective intention." This simple recognition stops you from unconsciously reacting to resistance and creates space for conscious response. Remember that resistance is actually evidence that you're growing. It only appears when you're stretching beyond your familiar identity and comfortable limitations. Instead of seeing resistance as an enemy, begin to recognize it as a signal that you're moving in the right direction. Step 2. Curious investigation. Instead of accepting resistance's stories as truth, become genuinely curious about what this resistance is trying to protect you from. Ask questions like, what is this resistance afraid might happen? What familiar identity is this resistance trying to preserve? What would I have to give up or become if I continued learning despite this resistance? Often resistance is protecting outdated versions of yourself that no longer serve your highest evolution. The part of you that's afraid of learning advanced mathematics might be protecting a childhood identity of not being a math person. The part that resists public speaking might be preserving an adolescent identity of being shy and invisible. Step 3. Compassionate dialogue. Speak directly to your resistance as if it were a concerned friend who's trying to protect you. Thank it for its concern, acknowledge its positive intention, and then gently explain why growth serves your highest good, despite the discomfort it creates. You might say, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe from potential embarrassment. I understand you're worried I might fail or be rejected. I appreciate your protection, and I'm choosing to learn anyway because my growth serves something bigger than my comfort." Step 4. Energy transformation. Instead of trying to eliminate the energy of resistance, consciously transform it into fuel for your learning journey. The same neurochemical activation that creates resistance can be redirected into excitement, determination, and focused attention. Take deep breaths and imagine drawing the energy of resistance up through your body and out through the top of your head, transforming it into light and using that light to illuminate your learning path. This isn't visualization fantasy. It's practical energy management that literally changes your nervous system state. Step 5. Committed action. Take one small learning step despite the presence of resistance. This doesn't mean forcing yourself through overwhelming discomfort, but rather choosing growth despite mild to moderate discomfort. Each time you act despite resistance, you strengthen your capacity for conscious choice and weaken the automatic power of resistance patterns. The goal isn't to eliminate resistance, but to develop the capacity to feel resistance and choose growth anyway. This is how you build what I call resistance resilience, the ability to pursue your authentic path regardless of the internal weather patterns that arise. The biology of breakthrough. Understanding the biological reality of learning breakthroughs helps you persist through the natural discomfort that precedes significant growth. Dr. Arne Dietrich's research on insight and creativity reveals that breakthrough moments are often preceded by periods of confusion, frustration, and apparent lack of progress. During these challenging periods, your brain is actually working harder than usual, forming new neural connections and reorganizing existing patterns. The discomfort you feel isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence of your brain literally restructuring itself to accommodate new ways of thinking and being. Dr. John Kunios's research using brain imaging technology shows that moments before breakthrough insights, the brain exhibits specific patterns of activity that look remarkably similar to meditative states. There's a quieting of verbal analytical thinking and an opening to non-linear intuitive processing. This means that the confusion and struggle you experience while learning challenging material isn't inefficiency. It's preparation for breakthrough. Your brain needs time to reorganize existing knowledge, create new connections, and integrate new information into coherent understanding. When Sarah was struggling with organic chemistry during her marine biology studies, she experienced weeks of feeling completely lost and overwhelmed. She was tempted to interpret this difficulty as evidence that she wasn't capable of scientific thinking, but understanding the biology of breakthrough helped her persist through the confusion until the moment when chemical concepts suddenly clicked into place and became intuitive tools for understanding marine ecosystems. The key insight is that resistance often intensifies just before breakthrough. Your ego recognizes that significant growth is about to occur and makes one final attempt to pull you back to familiar territory. When resistance feels strongest, you're often closest to the breakthrough that will transform your entire relationship with that subject. Transforming limiting emotional patterns, learning resistance, often carries emotional charges from past educational experiences that created shame, fear, or inadequacy around intellectual challenges. These emotional patterns can be more limiting than any intellectual difficulty because they create internal environments that make learning feel threatening rather than exciting. Dr. Peter Levine's research on trauma and learning reveals that negative educational experiences can create what he calls learning trauma, nervous system patterns that associate intellectual challenges with emotional or social danger. When these patterns are activated, your brain literally cannot access its full learning capacity because survival responses override growth responses. The process of transforming limiting emotional patterns begins with recognizing that your current emotional responses to learning challenges may not be responses to present reality. They may be responses to past experiences that are no longer relevant to your current situation. Emotional archaeology involves gently exploring the origins of your learning-related fears and resistances. Often, these patterns trace back to specific incidents: a teacher who made you feel stupid, classmates who mocked your questions, parents who criticized your grades, or testing situations that created overwhelming anxiety. Instead of trying to analyze or rationalize these experiences, practice feeling them with compassionate awareness while reminding yourself that you're now an adult with the power to choose your learning environment, pace, and approach. Somatic repatterning involves consciously creating new physical and emotional associations with learning challenges. When you notice old patterns of anxiety or resistance arising, pause and breathe deeply, relaxing your body and generating feelings of curiosity and excitement about what you're about to discover. Over time, this practice literally rewires your nervous system to associate learning challenges with positive emotions rather than threat responses. Your body begins to anticipate learning as an adventure rather than a danger. Success. Imprinting involves consciously celebrating and embodying every small learning victory, no matter how minor it might seem. Each time you understand a new concept, master a small skill, or have an insight, pause to feel the satisfaction and pride of growth. This practice strengthens neural pathways associated with learning success and confidence. The wisdom of graduated challenges. One of the most effective strategies for transforming resistance is working with what I call graduated challenges. Deliberately choosing learning goals that stretch you just beyond your comfort zone without triggering overwhelming resistance responses. Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states reveals that optimal learning occurs when challenges are matched to your current skill level, plus about 4%. Challenges that are too easy create boredom. Challenges that are too difficult create anxiety. But challenges calibrated to be just slightly beyond your current capacity create the optimal state for accelerated learning and growth. This means that effective learning isn't about forcing yourself through overwhelming challenges. It's about intelligently selecting challenges that expand your capacity without triggering defensive responses that shut down learning. The edge practice involves consistently working at the edge of your current abilities, that place where you're stretched but not overwhelmed, challenged but not crushed. At this edge, your brain produces optimal levels of stress hormones that enhance learning without creating trauma. You know you're working at the right edge when you feel simultaneously excited and slightly nervous, when you're focused but not tense, when you're challenged but not defeated. This is the sweet spot where resistance transforms into resilience and growth accelerates naturally. Progressive complexity means starting with foundational concepts and gradually building toward more advanced understanding. Instead of jumping into the deep end of complex subjects, you create stepping stones that allow you to build confidence and competence progressively. Sarah didn't start her marine biology journey with advanced biochemistry. She began with basic oceanography, then moved to marine ecology, then to biochemistry, and finally to her specialized research. Each level built upon the previous one, creating a foundation of success that made the next level feel achievable rather than impossible, creating resistance. Resilient learning environments. Your physical and social environment significantly influences your capacity to persist through learning challenges. Creating environments that support growth while honoring your nervous system's need for safety dramatically reduces resistance and accelerates transformation. Physical safety signals help your brain recognize that learning challenges are opportunities rather than threats. This includes learning in comfortable, private spaces where you won't be judged or interrupted, having all necessary resources easily available, and creating rituals that signal to your nervous system that learning time is safe. Time. Sarah created a dedicated study space in her apartment with comfortable seating, good lighting, plants, and inspirational images of marine ecosystems. This space became a sanctuary where her brain could relax into learning mode without the hypervigilance that arose when she tried to study in public spaces. Social support networks provide external encouragement and perspective when internal resistance feels overwhelming. This might include study groups, mentors, online communities, or friends who believe in your learning goals and can remind you of your capability when you forget. The key is choosing support networks that normalize the challenges of learning rather than judging them. You need people who understand that struggle is part of growth, not evidence of inadequacy. Celebration protocols involve consciously acknowledging and appreciating every step of progress, no matter how small. Resistance often creates tunnel vision that focuses only on how much you don't know, while ignoring how much you've already learned. Create regular practices of reviewing your learning progress, celebrating insights and breakthroughs, and appreciating the courage it takes to continue growing despite internal resistance. This practice literally rewires your brain to associate learning with reward rather than struggle. The hero's journey of conscious learning. Every genuine learning journey follows what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, a universal pattern of growth that includes departure from the familiar, encounters with challenges and resistance, transformation through trial, and return with new wisdom and capability. Understanding your learning path as a hero's journey helps you recognize that resistance isn't an obstacle to growth. It's an essential part of the transformation process. Heroes don't become heroes by avoiding challenges. They become heroes by facing challenges with courage and emerging transformed. The call to adventure is that initial spark of interest or curiosity that invites you toward new learning. This call often comes disguised as dissatisfaction with your current knowledge or abilities, or as excitement about possibilities you've never considered before. The resistance to the call is the natural hesitation, doubt, and fear that arises when you consider embarking on a challenging learning journey. This resistance is not a sign that you shouldn't pursue growth. It's a predictable part of every hero's journey. Crossing the threshold is the moment when you commit to learning despite resistance. When you take the first step into unknown territory and begin the actual journey of transformation. Tests and trials are the learning challenges, moments of confusion, and periods of doubt that naturally arise as you stretch beyond familiar territory. These aren't punishments or evidence of inadequacy. They're the necessary friction that creates growth. The transformation occurs not just when you master new knowledge, but when that knowledge changes who you are, how you see the world, and how you show up in life. This transformation is the real reward of the learning journey. The return with gifts happens when you integrate new knowledge and share it in service to others, contributing to the collective wisdom and helping others on their own learning journeys. Sarah's marine biology journey perfectly exemplified this pattern. Her call came through childhood fascination with ocean life. Her resistance manifested as decades of telling herself she was too old to become a scientist. Crossing the threshold happened when she finally submitted her first graduate school application. Tests and trials included challenging coursework, research setbacks, and moments of self-doubt. Her transformation occurred not just in gaining scientific knowledge, but in becoming someone who sees herself as a contributor to ocean conservation. Her return with gifts is now expressed through her research, teaching, and mentoring of other non-traditional students. When you understand your learning path as a hero's journey, resistance becomes not an enemy to defeat, but a teacher to learn from. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to develop courage, resilience, and wisdom. Every breakthrough becomes evidence of your expanding capacity and evolutionary potential. Tomorrow, you will encounter learning challenges that trigger resistance. Now you have the tools to recognize that resistance as a natural part of growth, to transform its energy into fuel for your journey, and to persist through discomfort toward the breakthrough that awaits on the other side of your current limitations. Your resistance isn't trying to stop you from learning. It's trying to keep you safe from change. Thank it for its concern, honor its protective intention, and then choose growth anyway. This is how ordinary people become extraordinary, how students become masters, and how dreamers become contributors to human evolution. The only question that remains is, what will you choose to learn despite your resistance? And who will you become through that courageous choice? Chapter 9. The Alchemical Application. Transforming knowledge into living wisdom. Knowledge without application is just entertainment for the intellect. Application with consciousness is pure alchemy. Marcus Thompson had consumed over 200 books on entrepreneurship, attended dozens of seminars, and could discuss business theory with the expertise of a Harvard MBA. Yet after 3 years of intensive learning, his bank account remained unchanged. His career felt stagnant, and his dreams of building a meaningful business seemed more distant than ever. One evening, while browsing through his impressive collection of business books, Marcus had a devastating realization. He had become a knowledge addict. He was addicted to the feeling of learning new concepts, the dopamine hit of discovering fresh insights, and the intellectual satisfaction of understanding complex theories. But somewhere between consuming informations and creating results, he had lost the bridge that transforms knowledge into reality. That night, Marcus made a radical decision. He would stop acquiring new knowledge until he had successfully applied what he already knew. For the next 6 months, he focused exclusively on implementing one simple concept from one book, providing extraordinary value to customers by solving their most pressing problems. Within 18 months, Marcus had built a 6-figure consulting business, hired his first employees, and been featured in major business publications. The difference wasn't new knowledge. It was the alchemical transformation of existing knowledge into living wisdom through consistent, conscious application. Marcus discovered what separates the 1% of lifelong learners who create extraordinary results from the 99% who remain trapped in the cycle of endless consumption. The sacred art of application, alchemy, where knowledge becomes wisdom and wisdom becomes transformative reality, the knowledge. Wisdom-reality continuum. Most people unconsciously operate under the illusion that knowledge equals power, but this equation is incomplete and misleading. Knowledge is potential power. It only becomes actual power when transformed through the sacred process of conscious application into embodied wisdom and tangible results. Dr. Russell Ackoff's research on learning systems reveals that information becomes knowledge through understanding. Knowledge becomes wisdom through experience, and wisdom becomes transformation through consistent application. This hierarchy represents not just intellectual development, but consciousness evolution. Each level requires qualitatively different capacities and commitments. Information exists everywhere, in books, courses, videos, and conversations. It's raw data that has no transformative power until it's processed by consciousness. Knowledge emerges when information is understood, organized, and integrated into existing mental frameworks. This is where most people stop, mistaking comprehension for transformation. Wisdom develops when knowledge is tested through experience, refined through trial and error, and integrated into your actual capabilities and character. This is where learning becomes personal and practical. Reality transformation occurs when wisdom is consistently applied in service to your authentic goals and values. creating measurable changes in your life and impact in the world. The tragedy of modern learning culture is that 99% of people get stuck at the knowledge level, endlessly consuming information without developing the skills and commitment necessary to transform that information into lived wisdom and real-world results. Dr. Edgar Dale's research on learning retention shows that we remember only 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, but 90% of what we do and teach to others. This isn't just about memory. It's about integration. Knowledge that isn't applied remains abstract and disconnected from your actual capabilities and character. The neuroscience of applied learning. When you move from passive consumption to active application, your brain undergoes profound changes that create lasting transformation rather than temporary understanding. Dr. Daniel Willingham's neuroscience research reveals that application-based learning creates what he calls procedural knowledge, information that's encoded not just in your verbal memory, but in your motor cortex, emotional centers, and automatic response patterns. This means that when you truly apply what you learn, you're not just adding information to your mental library. You're literally rewiring your brain to think, feel, and act differently in real-world situations. Application creates neural integration that transforms knowledge from something you know about into something you are. Mirror neuron activation occurs when you move from understanding concepts to practicing skills. These specialized neurons fire both when you perform an action and when you observe others performing the same action, creating embodied learning that integrates knowledge into your muscle memory and intuitive responses. Prefrontal cortex development happens when application requires you to make decisions, solve problems, and adapt knowledge to novel situations. This strengthens your executive function and enhances your ability to transfer learning across different contexts. Emotional memory consolidation occurs when application creates emotional experiences, both successes and failures, that attach feeling states to knowledge. This emotional encoding makes learning more memorable and motivating while building resilience and confidence. Default mode. Network restructuring takes place when consistent application changes your default thinking patterns and automatic responses. Instead of having to consciously remember what you learned, it becomes part of your natural way of processing reality and responding to challenges. Marcus's transformation happened not because he learned new information, but because consistent application rewired his brain to naturally think like an entrepreneur, recognize business opportunities, and take effective action despite uncertainty and risk. The 5 stages of application alchemy. Transforming knowledge into wisdom requires a systematic approach that honors both the complexity of real-world application and the natural learning processes of human consciousness. The application alchemy process consists of 5 distinct stages, each with specific practices and challenges. Stage 1. Conscious selection involves choosing which knowledge to apply, based not on what seems most interesting, but on what will create the most meaningful transformation in your current situation. This requires honest assessment of your actual needs, authentic goals, and current capacity for implementation. The key question is not, what do I want to learn? But what do I need to apply right now to move my life forward? This distinction separates entertainment learning from transformation learning. Marcus realized he didn't need more business knowledge. He needed to apply the customer value principles he already understood. This selection focused his energy on implementation rather than additional consumption. Stage 2. Contextual adaptation requires translating general principles into specific actions that fit your unique circumstances, resources, and constraints. Knowledge always emerges from particular contexts, but your application context is always unique, requiring creative adaptation rather than mechanical copying. This stage often involves what I call principle preservation, maintaining the essential wisdom of what you've learned while adapting the specific methods to your individual situation. You honor the core truth while customizing the expression. Stage 3. Experimental implementation is where you begin testing knowledge in real-world situations, starting with small, low-risk experiments that provide feedback without overwhelming consequences. This stage requires courage to act, despite incomplete understanding, and humility to learn from both successes and failures. The goal isn't perfect implementation, but conscious experimentation that generates experiential data about what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. Each experiment refines your understanding and builds your confidence for larger applications. Stage 4. Integration. Iteration involves cycling between action and reflection, using the feedback from implementation to deepen understanding and refine approach. This stage transforms both your knowledge and your character through the dynamic interaction between learning and living. Integration requires what Dr. Donald Schoen calls reflective practice, the ability to step back from action, analyze what happened, extract principles from experience, and apply those insights to improve future performance. Stage 5. Wisdom. Embodiment occurs when applied knowledge becomes so integrated into your consciousness and capabilities that it operates automatically and intuitively. You no longer have to remember what you learned. You have become someone who naturally expresses that wisdom. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions. At this stage, knowledge has completed its transformation into wisdom, and wisdom has become lived reality. You don't just know principles, you embody them. You don't just understand concepts, you are the living expression of those concepts. The application. Acceleration protocol. Most people fail to apply what they learn, not because they lack motivation, but because they lack systematic approaches that make application feel manageable and rewarding. The application acceleration protocol provides a structured pathway from knowledge to results that works with your brain's natural learning patterns. The 24-hour integration rule requires you to take some form of action within 24 hours of encountering any significant new knowledge. This action doesn't need to be comprehensive implementation. It can be as simple as discussing the concept with someone, writing about its relevance to your goals, or identifying one small way to test its validity. This rule prevents knowledge from becoming abstract by immediately connecting it to your lived experience. It also strengthens neural pathways between learning and action, making future application more natural and automatic. The teaching test involves explaining what you've learned to someone else within 48 hours of acquiring new knowledge. Teaching forces you to organize information clearly, identify gaps in understanding, and translate abstract concepts into practical language. Dr. Richard Feynman discovered that if you can't explain something simply, you don't really understand it. Teaching reveals the difference between intellectual familiarity and genuine comprehension while strengthening your grasp of the material. The implementation journal is a daily practice of recording one specific way you applied something you learned, what happened when you applied it, and what you learned from the application. This practice creates conscious awareness of the application process and builds motivation through recognition of progress. The journal also serves as a learning laboratory where you can track patterns, identify successful approaches, and refine your application strategies over time. The accountability architecture involves creating external structures that support consistent application. This might include joining or forming implementation groups, working with coaches or mentors, or creating public commitments that generate social pressure to follow through. External accountability compensates for the natural tendency to rationalize away uncomfortable but necessary actions. It provides motivation when internal motivation wanes and support when application becomes challenging. The progressive challenge system involves gradually increasing the difficulty and scope of your applications as your confidence and competence develop. This prevents overwhelm while ensuring continuous growth and expansion of capabilities. Start with applications that feel slightly challenging, but definitely achievable. Then systematically increase the stakes, complexity, and visibility of your implementations as you build evidence of your growing capabilities. Overcoming the application gap. The space between knowing what to do and actually doing it represents one of the most significant barriers to personal transformation. This application gap exists not because of laziness or lack of discipline, but because of specific psychological and neurological factors that can be understood and addressed. The intention-action disconnect occurs when your conscious intentions conflict with your unconscious programming. You may genuinely want to apply new knowledge, but deeper patterns of fear, comfort-seeking, or identity protection create automatic resistance to change. Timothy Wilson's research on dual processing reveals that we have two operating systems: the conscious, rational mind that sets intentions, and the unconscious, emotional mind that largely controls behavior. Effective application requires alignment between these two systems. Creating alignment involves what I call identity integration, gradually expanding your self-concept to include the identity of someone who naturally applies what they learn. Instead of trying to force new behaviors onto an old identity, you consciously evolve your identity to match your learning goals. The perfectionism paralysis prevents application by creating impossible standards that make any real-world attempt feel inadequate. Perfectionism disguises itself as high standards, but actually functions as sophisticated resistance to growth and visibility. The antidote to perfectionism is embracing what I call progressive excellence, the commitment to continuous improvement rather than flawless performance. You focus on being better today than yesterday, rather than being perfect compared to imaginary standards. The overwhelm override happens when you try to apply too much too quickly, creating cognitive overload that triggers shutdown responses. Your brain can only process a limited amount of change at once, without activating stress responses that inhibit learning and performance. The solution is micro-implementation, breaking applications into small, specific actions that feel manageable rather than overwhelming. Instead of trying to transform everything at once, you focus on one small application until it becomes natural, then add the next small element, the wisdom integration matrix. True wisdom emerges not from applying isolated pieces of knowledge, but from integrating multiple learning streams into coherent understanding that can be flexibly applied across different situations. The Wisdom Integration Matrix provides a framework for synthesizing diverse knowledge into unified wisdom. Horizontal integration involves connecting knowledge from different subjects or domains to create new insights and applications. This cross-pollination often produces the most innovative and powerful results because it combines perspectives that rarely interact. Marcus's consulting success came from integrating marketing psychology with systems thinking and personal development principles. This unique combination created solutions that pure business knowledge couldn't generate. Vertical integration means connecting theoretical knowledge with practical experience and spiritual wisdom. This creates understanding that operates simultaneously at intellectual, emotional, and intuitive levels, making it more powerful and authentic. Temporal integration involves connecting past learning with present application and future vision. This creates continuity and purpose that transforms random knowledge accumulation into coherent wisdom development. Social integration means applying knowledge not just for personal benefit, but in service to relationships, community, and larger purposes. This creates meaning and motivation that sustains long-term application, even when personal benefits aren't immediately apparent. The most profound transformations occur when these integration dimensions operate simultaneously, creating wisdom that's intellectually sound, emotionally resonant, practically effective, and spiritually meaningful. Creating application ecosystems. Sustainable application requires what I call application ecosystems, environmental and social structures that naturally support, encourage, and reward the translation of knowledge into action. These ecosystems make application feel natural and inevitable, rather than forced and difficult. Physical environment design involves organizing your spaces to facilitate application rather than just consumption. This might mean having designated areas for practice, tools readily available for implementation, or visual reminders of your application commitments. Social environment. Curation means surrounding yourself with people who value application over accumulation, who celebrate implementation attempts regardless of outcomes, and who model the integration of learning and living. Temporal environment. Structuring involves organizing your time to include both learning and application periods, ensuring that knowledge consumption is balanced with knowledge implementation. Motivational environment creation means establishing reward systems, progress tracking methods, and celebration rituals that acknowledge and appreciate application efforts and results. The most successful lifelong learners don't rely on willpower to apply what they learn. They create environments that make application the path of least resistance. The service success synthesis. The most powerful and sustainable applications occur when personal learning serves something greater than individual advancement. When knowledge application contributes to the well-being of others, the evolution of consciousness, or the healing of the world, it becomes infused with meaning and purpose that transcends personal motivation. Purpose-driven application involves asking not just, how can this knowledge serve me, but how can this knowledge serve others through me? This question transforms learning from self-improvement into service preparation. Legacy-conscious implementation means considering how your application of knowledge might contribute to the collective wisdom and evolution of humanity. This perspective transforms even small applications into contributions to something larger than yourself. Wisdom sharing. Integration involves teaching, mentoring, or modeling for others as a natural part of your application process. This creates accountability deepens your own understanding, and multiplies the impact of your learning. Marcus's consulting business succeeded not just because he applied business principles, but because he applied them in service to helping other entrepreneurs build meaningful companies. This service orientation attracted clients, inspired innovation, and created fulfillment beyond financial success. The continuous application spiral. The ultimate goal of application alchemy is not to perfectly implement what you currently know, but to develop the capacity for continuous transformation, the ability to perpetually convert new knowledge into evolved ways of being and contributing to the world. This requires understanding application not as a destination, but as a way of life, not as something you do occasionally, but as something you are constantly engaged in. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to apply communication principles. Every challenge becomes a chance to implement problem-solving frameworks. Every relationship becomes a laboratory for practicing emotional intelligence. When application becomes a continuous spiral rather than periodic events, learning and living merge into a single process of conscious evolution. You stop being someone who occasionally applies what you learn and become someone who lives as the ongoing expression of integrated wisdom. Tomorrow you'll encounter opportunities to apply something you've learned. Now you have the understanding and tools to transform those opportunities into stepping stones toward the person you're becoming and the contribution you're meant to make. The bridge between knowledge and transformation is application. The bridge between application and wisdom is consciousness. The bridge between wisdom and impact is service. Which bridge will you choose to cross today? Chapter 10. Becoming the 1%. Integrating perpetual education into your identity. When daily education becomes who you are, not just what you do, you transcend the limitations of ordinary existence. At 78 years old, Dr. Elena Vasquez was learning her 6th language, completing her 3rd doctorate, and pioneering research in quantum consciousness that was reshaping entire fields of scientific inquiry. When asked about her secret to lifelong vitality, creativity, and contribution, she smiled and said, "I have never stopped being a student. The moment you think you know enough, you begin dying while still breathing." Elena's life embodied what I call the 1% identity, a way of being in the world where learning isn't something you do occasionally, but the fundamental organizing principle of your existence. She had transcended the common human pattern of learning intensively in youth and then gradually closing to new possibilities with age. Instead, she had become living proof that human consciousness can expand indefinitely when education becomes not just an activity, but an identity. Elena represents the pinnacle of what's possible when you fully integrate perpetual education into your being. She had moved beyond needing external motivation to learn, because learning had become as natural and necessary as breathing. She didn't have to remember to grow, because growth had become her default mode of existence. This is what awaits you on the other side of this journey. Not just more knowledge or better skills, but a complete transformation of your relationship with existence itself. You stop being someone who occasionally learns and becomes someone who is perpetually becoming, always evolving, always expanding, always contributing to the collective evolution of human consciousness. The identity architecture of perpetual learning. Most people carry what I call fixed identity programming. Subconscious beliefs about who they are that remain largely unchanged from early adulthood until death. This programming creates the illusion of a solid, permanent self that experiences life as something that happens to them rather than something they consciously create through their choices and evolution. But the 1% of perpetual learners operate from what Dr. Carol Dweck calls growth identity architecture, a fluid, expandable sense of self that's organized around becoming rather than being, evolution rather than status quo, contribution rather than consumption. Fixed identity says, this is who I am, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, and this probably won't change much. Growth identity says, this is who I am becoming, this is what I'm currently developing, this is what I'm learning to understand, and everything can evolve with conscious intention. The neuroscience behind this distinction is profound. Dr. Michael Merzenich research reveals that people with growth identities maintain higher levels of neuroplasticity throughout their lives. Their brains remain more flexible, more capable of forming new connections, and more responsive to learning challenges well into advanced age. This isn't just about mental capacity. It's about life experience. People with growth identities report higher levels of life satisfaction, greater resilience during challenges, more meaningful relationships, and deeper sense of purpose, regardless of external circumstances. Elena maintained cognitive abilities and creative output at 78 that exceeded most people in their 30s, not because of exceptional genetics, but because her identity was organized around continuous growth rather than gradual decline. The motivation. Evolution, from external to internal to transcendent. The journey to becoming part of the 1% involves a fundamental evolution in what motivates your learning and growth. Most people never complete this evolution, remaining trapped in lower levels of motivation that eventually fail to sustain long-term commitment to growth. Level 1. External motivation drives learning through rewards, recognition, or avoiding negative consequences. This is the motivation of grades, certifications, promotions, and social approval. While this motivation can create initial momentum, it's ultimately unsustainable because it depends on external validation that may not always be available. Level 2. Internal motivation emerges from personal satisfaction, curiosity, and the intrinsic joy of learning and growth. This motivation is more sustainable because it doesn't require external validation, but it can still fluctuate based on mood, circumstances, and personal challenges. Level 3. Transcendent motivation arises from understanding learning as service to something greater than yourself. The evolution of consciousness, the healing of the world, the advancement of human knowledge, or the fulfillment of your unique purpose in the cosmic story. The 1% operate primarily from transcendent motivation. They don't learn because they have to, or even because they want to. They learn because they recognize learning as their responsibility to the interconnected web of existence, of which they are a part. This transcendent motivation creates what Viktor Frankl called self-transcendent purpose, meaning that emerges not from personal satisfaction, but from contribution to something larger than individual concerns. This type of motivation is essentially limitless because it's connected to the infinite nature of consciousness and evolution. Elena's research in quantum consciousness wasn't motivated by personal career advancement or even intellectual curiosity alone. It was driven by her recognition that understanding consciousness was essential for humanity's next evolutionary leap. This transcendent purpose provided unshakable motivation that sustained her through decades of challenging research, creating your learning legacy. The 1% understand that their learning journey isn't just about personal development. It's about contributing to the collective evolution of human knowledge and wisdom. This understanding transforms every learning experience into a sacred responsibility and every application into a gift to future generations. Legacy consciousness involves asking not just, "What do I want to learn?" but "What does the world need me to understand? What knowledge is seeking to emerge through my consciousness? How can my learning serve the healing and evolution of our planet?" These questions connect your individual learning path to the larger currents of evolution and transformation that are moving through human consciousness. They transform personal education into cosmic service. Wisdom. Transmission means recognizing that every insight you gain, every skill you develop, and every breakthrough you experience becomes part of the collective field of human knowledge. Through morphic resonance and collective consciousness, your learning makes it easier for others to access similar understanding. This isn't metaphysical speculation, it's practical reality. Every time someone breaks through a learning barrier, they create neural pathways and energetic patterns that become available to others attempting similar breakthroughs. Your learning journey contributes to the collective intelligence of our species. Mentorship. Magnetism naturally emerges when you embody the 1% identity. People are attracted to those who are genuinely growing and evolving, and they naturally seek guidance, inspiration, and support from those who model lifelong learning. This creates opportunities to share your knowledge, accelerate others' growth, and multiply the impact of your learning journey. But mentorship isn't just about helping others. It's about deepening your own understanding through teaching and creating accountability for continued growth. Elena had mentored over 200 researchers throughout her career, not because she sought followers, but because sharing knowledge was a natural expression of her growth identity. Each mentoring relationship deepened her own understanding and contributed to the advancement of her field. The daily architecture of excellence. Becoming part of the 1% isn't about occasional intense learning efforts. It's about creating daily practices and life structures that make continuous growth as natural and reliable as your heartbeat. This requires what I call excellence architecture. Systematic approaches to organizing your life around perpetual education. The learning budget involves allocating specific percentages of your time, energy, and financial resources to growth and education, just as you budget for housing, food, and other necessities. The 1% typically invest 10 to 20% of their resources in learning because they understand that education is not an expense, but an investment that multiplies all other investments. This budget includes not just formal education, but books, courses, conferences, mentoring, travel for learning purposes, and time for reflection and application. When learning becomes a line item in your budget, it becomes a priority that survives competing demands and changing circumstances. The growth audit is a regular assessment of your learning progress, application effectiveness, and identity evolution. Just as businesses conduct regular audits to assess financial health, the 1% regularly evaluate their learning health to ensure they're growing in alignment with their authentic interests and highest purposes. This audit asks questions like, what have I learned in the past quarter? How have I applied new knowledge? What evidence do I have of personal evolution? What adjustments do I need to make to my learning approach? This practice maintains conscious awareness of growth and prevents stagnation from occurring unconsciously. The Excellence Network consists of relationships with people who challenge your thinking, support your growth, and share your commitment to continuous evolution. The quality of your network largely determines the quality of your learning opportunities and growth trajectory. The 1% actively cultivate relationships with people who are smarter, more experienced, or more advanced in areas they want to develop. They seek out mentors, peers, and even students who can accelerate their learning and hold them accountable to their growth commitments. The compound effect of identity-level learning. When learning becomes integrated at the identity level, rather than remaining a periodic activity, it creates compound effects that exponentially accelerate all areas of your life. This compounding occurs because growth identity affects not just what you know, but how you think, feel, and respond to every situation. Cognitive compounding occurs when each new piece of knowledge connects with and amplifies everything you've already learned, creating exponential rather than linear increases in understanding and capability. Your brain becomes more adept at recognizing patterns, making connections, and generating innovative solutions. Emotional compounding develops as continuous learning builds confidence, resilience, and positive expectations about your ability to handle challenges and adapt to change. Each successful learning experience strengthens your belief in your capacity for growth and transformation. Social compounding emerges as your growth identity attracts other growth-oriented people and opportunities. You become known as someone who is always evolving, which creates a reputation that opens doors and creates possibilities that wouldn't be available to someone with a fixed identity. Contribution compounding occurs when your expanded knowledge and capabilities enable you to make increasingly meaningful contributions to your field, community, and the world. Each contribution creates opportunities for greater impact and more significant service. Elena's compound effects were visible in every area of her life. Her cognitive abilities remained sharp. Her emotional resilience was remarkable. Her social connections spanned multiple continents and generations, and her scientific contributions had influenced thousands of researchers and millions of people. Navigating the challenges of the 1% path. Living as part of the 1% creates unique challenges that most people never encounter. Understanding these challenges and developing strategies for navigating them is essential for sustaining long-term growth identity. The isolation challenge arises because continuous learners often outgrow their original social circles and communities. As you evolve, you may find fewer people who share your interests, understand your references, or support your growth journey. This can create loneliness and pressure to slow your growth to maintain relationships. The solution is actively building new communities while honoring the contributions that original relationships made to your development. This might involve joining learning communities, attending conferences, or using technology to connect with like-minded people globally. The overwhelm challenge occurs when you become aware of how much there is to learn and how much you don't know. Instead of ignorance being bliss, knowledge creates awareness of infinite ignorance, which can feel overwhelming or discouraging. The antidote is remembering that the goal isn't to know everything, but to remain open to knowing anything that serves your growth and contribution. You focus on learning what's most aligned with your authentic interests and highest purposes, rather than trying to learn everything. The application challenge intensifies as you acquire more knowledge that needs to be integrated and applied. Without systematic approaches to application, learning can become accumulation rather than transformation. This requires developing increasingly sophisticated systems for processing, integrating, and applying knowledge, while maintaining focus on what matters most for your current stage of development and service. The humility challenge emerges as expanded knowledge could create arrogance or intellectual pride. The more you know, the more tempting it becomes to judge others who know less, or to use knowledge as a source of superiority rather than service. The solution is remembering that knowledge is a gift that comes through you rather than from you, and that wisdom includes understanding the limitations of knowledge and the importance of compassion, humility, and service, creating ripple effects of transformation. When you embody the 1% identity, your influence extends far beyond your immediate sphere. You become what systems theorists call a positive deviant, someone whose different way of being creates possibilities for others and contributes to the evolution of entire systems. Modeling effects occur simply through being who you are. When others see someone genuinely committed to lifelong learning and growth, it gives them permission to pursue their own evolution and challenges limiting beliefs about what's possible at different life stages. Teaching effects emerge naturally as people seek your guidance, advice, and perspective. Even informal conversations become opportunities to share insights, ask questions that promote thinking, and suggest resources that could support others' growth. Innovation effects result from your expanded consciousness generating ideas, solutions, and possibilities that wouldn't emerge from more conventional thinking patterns. Your learning journey contributes to the advancement of knowledge in your fields of interest and application. Cultural effects occur when enough people adopt growth identities to shift the culture of organizations, communities, or societies toward valuing learning, adaptation, and evolution over stability, tradition, and status quo. Elena's ripple effects included not only her direct research contributions, but the hundreds of researchers she influenced, the students who caught her passion for learning, the institutions that changed their approaches to education because of her example, and the cultural shift toward recognizing learning as a lifelong possibility rather than a youth activity, the commitment ceremony of becoming. Transitioning from someone who occasionally learns to someone whose identity is organized around perpetual education requires a formal commitment, not to external authorities, but to your highest self, your deepest purposes, and the evolutionary currents that are moving through consciousness. This commitment isn't about perfection or never failing to learn something new. It's about orienting your life around growth rather than stagnation, curiosity rather than assumption, service rather than consumption, and becoming rather than arriving. The Growth Covenant is a sacred agreement with yourself to remain open to learning, regardless of age, circumstances, or external pressures. It's a commitment to curiosity, humility, and the courage to remain a beginner in areas where you want to expand. The service pledge is a recognition that your learning journey serves something greater than personal advancement. Every insight you gain, every skill you develop, and every breakthrough you experience contributes to the collective evolution of human consciousness. The legacy intention involves committing to leave the world more knowledgeable, more conscious, and more capable than you found it. Your learning journey becomes your contribution to the ongoing story of human development and planetary healing. The present moment practice is the commitment to remain fully engaged with whatever you're learning right now, rather than constantly seeking the next learning opportunity or comparing your progress to others. This practice transforms learning from achievement-oriented activity to presence-oriented way of being. The future that awaits When you fully integrate perpetual education into your identity, you step into a future that most people can't even imagine. You become someone who is always becoming, always contributing, always expanding the boundaries of what's possible for human consciousness and planetary evolution. You wake up each morning not as a fixed self trying to get through another day, but as an evolving consciousness curious about what wants to emerge through your awareness and actions. You approach challenges not as problems to solve, but as opportunities to learn and grow. You engage with people not as sources of validation, but as fellow travelers on the journey of conscious evolution. Your life becomes a laboratory for exploring human potential, a classroom for developing wisdom, and a platform for contributing to the healing and evolution of our world. Every day offers new possibilities for growth, service, and contribution. Most importantly, you discover that the fear of aging, irrelevance, and death that drives so much human suffering dissolves when your identity is organized around growth rather than preservation. You understand that while your physical form is temporary, your contributions to the evolution of consciousness are eternal. Elena lived this reality until her final day. Even in her last years, she was learning, growing, contributing, and inspiring others to embrace their own potential for lifelong evolution. Her death was not a defeat, but a graduation, a completion of one phase of her contribution to cosmic evolution. Your invitation to transcendence. You now stand at the threshold of a choice that will determine the trajectory of the rest of your life. You can return to the comfort of familiar patterns, the safety of known limitations, and the illusion that you are who you are, and that's who you'll always be. Or you can step across the threshold into the 1%, those rare individuals who understand that being human means being in a constant state of becoming. This isn't a choice you make once and forget. It's a choice you make every morning when you wake up, every time you encounter something you don't understand, every moment when you could choose comfort over growth, every situation where you could choose judgment over curiosity. The world needs you to make this choice, not because it needs another smart person, but because it needs people who embody the possibility of lifelong growth and evolution. It needs models of what's possible when human consciousness commits to perpetual expansion rather than gradual contraction. Your unique combination of interests, experiences, and perspectives represents a contribution that only you can make to the collective evolution of human knowledge and wisdom. But this contribution can only emerge through your commitment to never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop becoming. Tomorrow morning, you'll wake up with a choice. Will you wake up as someone who occasionally learns, or as someone whose very essence is organized around perpetual education and evolutionary contribution? Will you approach the day as a consumer of experiences, or as a conscious participant in the ongoing creation of reality? The 1% are waiting to welcome you. The universe is waiting to discover what wants to emerge through your consciousness. Your highest self is waiting for you to step into the identity that you've always known was possible, but perhaps never dared to fully embrace. The only question that remains is, are you ready to become who you've always known you could be? Are you ready to join the 1% who never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop contributing to the magnificent adventure of conscious evolution? Your transformation begins with your next choice to learn something new. Your evolution begins with your decision to see every experience as an opportunity for growth. Your contribution to the 1% begins with your commitment to embody the possibility of lifelong learning for everyone whose life you touch. The future is waiting. Who will you choose to become?